everyone. Again, we're back from executive session. Next item on our agenda is action items, new business. No, is that right? Student ambassadors. Dr. Wiegand.
Yes, it was approximately a year ago that the Board of Education approved the Student Ambassador Program, and we piloted the program this last school year during second semester, and so we're going to continue. And I bring forward to you the recommended candidates to represent Centennial and Central. And our recommended candidates are Sophie Kim from Centennial High School and Cedric Jones from Central High School. So I would ask that they are sworn in this evening.
So I am going to pass on my duties to Jamar as Vice President. So Jamar, if you want to step out front with our new ambassadors. That sounds great. Congratulations, you two. Thanks for joining us at the table. I would like to start out since Cedric, we know who you are, and we know a little bit about you, but if you could talk a little bit about your last year's experience on the board, and then Sophie, talk about what you're going to bring to the table as a student ambassador from Centennial.
Well, as I was kind of telling Sophie earlier, it's a lot of fun being on the board just because I feel like you provide student voice, you know, and I feel like that's something that I definitely don't take for granted. I really enjoyed the experience. I felt like I got a lot of experience, and I got a lot of, I got to know a lot of really cool people, which I really appreciated. So I'm just excited for this upcoming year.
Hi, I'm hoping to bring some more attention to the people that don't get enough attention in the school, and hope to bring their voice in rather than just the majority, but also the minorities.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome. Recognition. So what we do is we take turns reading the recognitions. And so Cedric, if you would please start us off. We're on 5 under recognitions.
Congratulations to the Champaign Unit 4 Schools students whose screenplays were featured in the Penn's to Wins Gala, held August 9th at the Virginia Theater. The gala featured 21 short films produced by local filmmakers and were based on scripts written by local K-12 students.
The Summer Youth Employment Program wrapped up its 4th year with a closing ceremony on July 28th. The closing ceremony featured student MCs and remarks from Mayor Don Gerard and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Susan Zola, as well as recognition of outstanding students through 5 Student Achievement Awards. SYEP provides job training and career exploration of opportunities to youth in Champaign Unit 4 schools through the completion of a 6-week job placement program with a local business. SYEP partners with nearly 70 local businesses and serves over 140 students. The program is a collaborative effort between the City of Champaign and the Champaign Unit 4 School District.
Booker T. Washington STEM Academy has been featured on CNN.com as part of their Better by Design segment highlighting innovative building designs. BTW was used as an example of an innovative school. Facility was completed in 2011 with funds from the countywide 1% sales tax and was designed by Cannon Design and Bailey Edward Architects.
Daniel Reed, a chemistry and physics teacher at Central High School, worked this summer with the University of Illinois Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering to gain experience with nanotechnology research. He conducted the research in partnership with university professors and graduate students, fabricating a silicon surface with embedded phosphorus lines that cause infrared light diffraction.
This summer, Champaign Middle School students gain experience in the STEM fields and agriculture through a partnership with a local farmer and the University of Illinois Crop Sciences. Students were able to learn about and operate a framing drone in order to conduct field research. This experience allowed students to apply their knowledge gained in the classroom, and many students stated this was their first experience visiting a farm.
Many Unit 4 teachers recently participating in the Beginning Teachers STEM Conference held at the iHotel and Conference Center. The conference is held for K-12 STEM teachers with 1 to 4 years of full-time classroom experience and featured speakers, STEM content breakout sessions, and networking opportunities. Board of Education member Karis Lee was among the lineup of speakers to address this group, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
The Champaign Unit 4 Educational Technology Department held the second annual CU4 Technology Conference at Booker T. Washington STEM Academy on August 6th. The conference featured 45 presenters with over 60 sessions focusing on innovative teaching practices and technology in the classroom.
Congratulations to the Champaign Early Childhood Center, which has earned the Circle of Quality from the Illinois State Board of Education, ISBE. The Circle of Quality is awarded on behalf of ISBE, the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, and the Illinois Department of Human Services based on standards set through the Accelerate Illinois program. Schools are assessed in the areas of early learning and development, instructional excellence, family services, staff qualifications, professional development, and program administration.
Thank you all. Next item, public comments. I do not have any cards in front of me. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, next item, communications from CFT. Thank you. Communications from CESP. Communications from PTA Council. Board members? Anyone? That's a first, right? All right, moving on. Communications from student and ambassadors. This is the first time? Nothing? No? Okay, very good.
Starts next week.
School start next week. You're excited? Yeah? Yeah.
So excited.
All right, informational items. August 20th, first day of school, regular calendar, full day for grades 1 through 9.
August 21st, second day of school, regular calendar, full day for all grades, half day for half kindergarten class attend.
August 22nd, third day of school, regular calendar, full day for all grades, half kindergarten class attendance.
August 29th, 2014, Institute Day, no school for students.
September 1st, Labor Day, no school.
September 8th, regular board meeting, 6 p.m.
September 22nd, special board meeting, 6 p.m.
All right, reports, new business, Centennial and Central updates. Dr. Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. We are here with the 2 high school principals and some of the assistant principals. We'll introduce in a second to give you an update of some of the progress made at the high schools and some initiatives we have going underway.
and I think we can go ahead and start right off the bat. We'll go over some Explorer data, some advanced placement data. We'll look at some other things. What you won't see on here is our current ACT data. That literally came in today, and we're not allowed to share it. They put an embargo on that. So as soon as we have that, we will share that with you, but pretty pleased with what we're seeing there. And the same thing with grad rate. We don't do a final grad rate calculation for probably another few weeks that the state comes in. It's because our grad rate is actually determined by a state grad rate. We have to have students picked up in other schools in our system, and so we don't want to give a preliminary grad rate until we really have the final one. Okay, but you'll see some other things now. There we go. We'll go over some of our warning system, early warning system, student voice, and professional development plans. So even though I don't have the ACT data to share with you, what I'd like to share with you is some things that we look at in order to predict ACT data and to make sure that we're doing okay in terms of ACT progress. And what we have now is something called the EPASS system, which means in the 9th grade and the 8th grade as well, we just started, students take the Explore exam. In the 10th grade, they take the Plan exam. And that gives us an idea of how they should do on the ACT their junior year. And you can see from just, this is our 8th grade cohort that took it in 11-12, and they get matched with their sophomore year. And you can see we had 28% of our students meeting the expectations on Explore, which I realize may not sound ridiculously great. And we are working on that, but truthfully it is compared to nationally and even state. If you'll see nationally, that's 19%. And when we go to the meeting on the plan, we have 29%. And what that shows us is that we are making the predicted growth that we are supposed to make, meaning we've gone from 28% to 29%. Those are the same students testing, and we were able to show the growth that ACT expects. Same thing here when we move to 9th graders matched with their sophomore. We're at 31% and equaling 31% when they became sophomores. Again, making predicted growth that ACT tells us we should make. We'd like to accelerate that, of course, but we do know that we're moving on track the way we're supposed to, again, above nationally. So it's good things to see. Our advanced placement program is making some progress as well. I provided you with a brochure, one of the things that we've done that you can see to kind of pump up everyone's knowledge about advanced placement. But we do have a 4-year goal we started 2 years ago, so we're in our 2nd year of that, to increase the number of students in our AP classes, to increase the number of exams they're taking, and to increase the number of minority and low-income students in those classes and their scores on those. I've given us about 4 years. I'm hopeful we'll reach it, but it's very important for all of us, I'm sure, that we make that. And you can see we are making progress. We were kind of running the same numbers there for, total number of AP students for about 3 years, and then we pumped it up to 252 and now 266 last year. So we're moving on that. Number of exams up to 487. From 2 years ago, we were at 409. And then a very important one, not only taking the exam, but doing well on the exam, a 3, it's out of 5. So a 3 is generally considered a positive score on the AP exam. Many universities take that for university credit. Not all, but many do. And you can see we have each year more students earning a 3 or above on the advanced placement exams. For a total listing of our advanced placement courses, by the way, that's in the brochure that you have. And I should tell you, we are in the process of most likely proposing 2 more next fall, coming up pretty here in a couple months.
Just a quick question, I just want to clarify that
Yes.
192, that's of the total students taking the exam, not the number of exams passed.
Yeah,
right?
it's the number of
So
exams with 3 or above of the
266,
students.
192 of them got 3s or better.
I think it's of total exams, actually, right? That's a good question. Let me see. Of total number of, it's 3 or above of the tests, not students. Yeah.
Okay.
So it could be the same student on 2 different tests. Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then we're going to look at it demographically. And advanced placement uses some demographic terms that we don't normally use, but they do. They split up our Hispanic Latino population, Mexican and Puerto Rican, and we don't generally do that. But we're going to go by what they do. And you'll see we've had an increase for our African American students, Black students, from 13 2 years ago to 29 taking the exams. Mexican students up and down. More Puerto Rican students this year. Other Hispanic up a little bit. And then the low income is probably the biggest increase from 2 years ago of almost 20 students.
Excuse me, I just want to ask one
Yeah.
question to that. What do you think is the contributing factor that you're seeing?
The increase?
Yep.
Yeah, we've done quite a few things. So some of it is promotion, basically making sure that more students know about the exams and know about the tests. The last 2 years, we've surveyed all the students before they were going to take the test, so they're in the advanced placement classes, and said, what do you need in order to take the test? Because we do have students that don't take the test. they take the class, but they don't take the test. And sometimes they've come back with, I just was taking it to advance myself. I'm not interested in the exam. But other times, even the low-income students do get a waiver from the College Board. But if you're you're not a low-income student, and you're taking 3 of these, it can be very pricey. They're about $86 or something a piece. And so we've actually helped some students. We said, all right, so you've got a couple, we'll try and see what we can do so you can take this other one. So we provided a little bit of funding there. We did create a video last year. I don't know if you saw the video or not. It is online, where we're sharing that with all of our younger students and our freshmen coming in, explaining what advanced placement tests are and why it's important to take them. So a lot of it is just putting the word out and making sure people know. Here's the mean scores. This is an area that we continue to move on, but we need to move on quicker if we can. Again, as I told you before, 3 or above is pretty much what we're shooting for. And you can see demographically, in some areas, we're doing quite well. I didn't put the Puerto Rican score of the one Puerto Rican student that took it in 2013 because it's not right to share that person's score, but there was someone there. But other Hispanic, 3.5 is strong. Low income moving very slowly, upward, but very slowly. And that goes to a lot more of us building the rigor of our courses prior to advanced placement. And more efforts will be going to that in the next couple of years. But that is kind of a whole continuum of growth. It's not only do we have to provide support when the students are in the advanced placement classes, but we have to make sure they've had the strength coming through the whole programming. And so I think we'll see some progress there pretty soon. We're making some, but I'd like it to be quicker. All of us would. But as a district, it's pretty good stuff. Our district mean score is 3.13. The state is 3.05, United States is 2.87, and global is 2.89. So we should be proud of the progress we're making. We just want to make sure we get more students in there and more have opportunities. The next thing, just a quick little note update on, is advanced dual credit, which I think you've been receiving some information on throughout. But you'll see that we continue to have more of our juniors and seniors, percentage of our junior and senior class taking dual credit. You approved a course last year that has 100 kids taking it, the English dual credit course. We'll have about 100 students in it next year, so this should go up significantly. You also approved some computer science courses that we added, so this should go up as well because of those. So we should only see continued growth in this area. And dual credit, so you know, the transferable dual credit, such as the English, that is a transferable English course to almost any university. So you go to the University of Illinois after taking that course, and you do not have to take their first English course at the University of Illinois. That is a new change for the U of I to accept that, and we're very happy about that. Yep. Helps our families a lot financially. Attendance, real quick so you can see where we are. We continue to monitor. High schools are a little bit different. The state kind of looks at more of a 90% and above for high schools. But you see, real important to us is looking across demographically and make sure we're about even and equal with everyone. We do a lot of things with attendance. Last year was some truancy, and students actually, families taken to court for truancy. That was kicked in. That has been done before, but state's attorney really was strong on it last year, and we had some progress from that. Families having to bring their students to school, which was good. You'll see that for Centennial and Central. And I'm not going to detail here because Mr. Thomas did that a few weeks ago, but just a reminder, we did have really great progress in the area of discipline at the high schools, where we've decreased our referrals significantly in the past 2 years, and we've decreased the suspensions in the past 2 years. So all of these things coming together should lead to strong outcomes for all as we slowly make the progress we are. Lastly, before I turn it over to other people, Dr. Wiegand, 2 years ago, had a leadership book study from this book, Robert Marzano, kind of expert in our field for sure, on district leadership that works. And one of the biggest things that was shared in this book is to look at a strong district using something called he calls defined autonomy. And Dr. Wiegand's been very strong with her emphasis on that and saying it is the requirement of the district to set parameters, guidelines, non-negotiables in certain areas of ways that we will proceed, but we do permit and allow and encourage our buildings to work within those parameters to make things work within their buildings. And so as you see Mr. Johnson come up now and Mr. Williams come up to talk about their high schools, you're going to see some things that are different and some things that are the same. They'll have slightly different systems of support, slightly different early warning system processes, and slightly different professional development plans, but all with the same goal in reaching those non-negotiables that have been set at the district level. And so I'll turn it over to the 2 high school principals.
Good evening. Good to see you again. So at Central, when we talk about systems of support, we're talking about school-wide systems of support in these next few slides. If I could show you this slide from what it was 3 years ago to what it is now, a significant change has happened. 3 years ago, we were mostly focusing on behavioral interventions, and we didn't have very many of those. Now we are focusing on academic interventions and behavioral interventions. You can see everything in that circle underneath, or that oval underneath. That would be what we call the bedrock, that every student should have that as in their playing field. It involves areas in curriculum, instruction, assessment, and social emotional. And then if students need interventions, it goes into tier 1, and then we move up to tier 2 and to tier 3. This used to be called RTI up until this year, and now in the state it is called MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tier Systems of Support. In tier 1 last year, our universal team, which is comprised of reps from all over the building, including secretarial and hall monitors, so we do include our support staff on this team. They developed a behavior T-chart of classroom versus office managed behaviors. They talked about school-wide behavioral expectations and developed charts for those and posted those so that students could see them. Talked about teaching of they focused on teaching of those expectations and incentive planning. At Central, our teaching of the expectations is done through videos, which are pushed out through the smart boards. To some students, they're kind of hokey, but it does get the message across. We review the school-wide behavior data on this team at least once a month. Sometimes they meet twice a month, and they ensure that universal expectations of student support is communicated frequently. These are just examples. You shouldn't be able to read these on the screen, and if you have very good eyes, you might be able to read this on paper. But on the left, you'll see an example of a poster that's put up in the hallways regarding the universal expectations, and on the right, you have the teacher versus office managed behavior. That chart on the right, that's not a new concept, but it is something that solidifies the fact that we truly believe that the authority in the classroom needs to remain with the teacher, and that when a teacher has to write a discipline referral, to a certain extent, some of that authority is given up. And so we want to make sure that as much as possible that authority stays there. And then the other piece of that is when we worked with teachers with this, we spoke last year a lot on the authority isn't authoritarian, that the authority is more about building relationships with students. So as those things on the left, the teacher-managed behaviors crop up, the relationships that you build with your students are the things that actually will help those things to go away. Also tier 1, so we have freshman, sophomore supports coming up for this year. It used to be a tier 2, and this year we are moving it to tier 1, meaning that all freshmen and sophomores will have supports during their lunchtime. So they have lunch for 22 minutes, and then they will move into what used to be, we called it advisory, but as Christine will tell you, it was more of a study hall. So this is now going to be actually an intervention time. Students will be placed into sections according to their math class every other day, or literacy every other day. In the case of sophomores, the chemistry is a stumbling block, and when we look at our grades, we realize that, and most sophomores are signed up for chemistry, so we're going to put them in with some specific content there. Bi-weekly, they'll have career cruising support, and then bi-weekly they'll do goal setting, where students are going to be sitting in front of a computer, looking up their grades, and setting 2-week goals for what they could do to improve. That's for freshmen and sophomores. We're going to continue focusing on teaching expectation to students. We're going to refine the school-wide goals and incentives, and we're going to ensure tier 1 interventions are in place by all staff, not just a few. Tier 2, that's comprised of what we call student support personnel, so administrators, counselors, social workers, the TSA, the mentor coordinators, that sort of thing. They meet weekly. They determine, coordinate, and track data. So tier 2 is based a lot on data. Tier 1 can be based on data as well as inputs from teachers, noticing students that are struggling and that sort of thing. Tier 2 is strictly data-based. So what the data shows when a student crops up for tier 2 interventions, it's because the data is showing that students need that support. Honors level support is also a part of tier 2, so it's not just about students who are struggling. It's not just about maybe the academically challenged students, but we also put honors level support in because we realize with the push that Laura talked about with AP classes and honors level classes, and we're trying to get more students into those classes, and we're trying to push through our counselors and through our teachers, them even taking more AP classes. We also realize we have to put supports in place because that's not an automatic. It is not an automatic, oh, I understand how to do this honors level course. And so we also put honors level support in. We do schedule change recommendations, both up and down. Again, it's data-based. Weekly grade watch list monitoring and midterm support recommendations, which includes during the day tutoring, which is available. Last year, this is just a slide, I'm not going to review the numbers too much, but as far as our Tier 2 data, those on the left are our Tier 2 interventions from last year, how many students each intervention served, and then the number of students that, when we say responded, they responded positively from that intervention. This year for Tier 2, we're going to continue the data-based interventions. We will replace Math Advisory as with ensuring that all 9th and 10th grade students receive that. So here we had Math Advisory as a Tier 2, which means those students were, just select students were in that. Now all students will get it as a Tier 1. We're adding a second level of check-in, check-out with individual features. So students who don't respond to sort of the general check-in, check-out will get more specific with them. Adding a second level of social academic intervention groups, or SAGE groups, with more individualized and intensive features. And we also are training our psychologists to run Sparks. I believe both high schools are doing that. Tier 3 used to be the problem-solving team and continues to be the problem-solving team, which is part of the special education referral process. We focus on individual students at this point. This year, we're going to assign an administrator as a Tier 3 coordinator, and we'll continue to develop wraparound teams and renew mapping procedures, and referrals will come to the Tier 3 team from the problem-solving team. For honors level support, as a Tier 3, when students are not responding to the general daily tutoring, we're going to provide individual support for them struggling despite those interventions at the Tier 2 level. So Tier 3, again, for this year, eventually phase out problem-solving team and develop wraparound and renew mapping. And Greg.
Thanks. Well, yeah, it's good to be back here again. Just like Joe said. One thing that I'll add before I kind of launch into the few slides I have here is that much like it is with Joe at Central, at Centennial, what you're seeing here is what we're going to talk about is the work of multiple committees, a whole lot of teachers, a lot of administrators doing a lot of really good work. And so these are things that we have kind of put in place and that have evolved over time for the past few years. And some of these things are working pretty well, and some of the things we really need to continue to work on and develop. And so what I'm going to focus on as I go through these slides is a little bit of what we're doing and a little bit more about kind of how we're tracking it, right? How we're kind of making sure that this stuff is working for us and for our kids. All right, Joe showed his pyramid of intervention slide before. This is the same thing that we have at Centennial. And you can see, at the bottom it's more kind of generalized support, academic on the left, behavior on the right, and that support gets more and more targeted as you move up the intervention slide, okay? So what does that look like a little bit more specifically? Tier 1, universal for the entire school. Ryan Cowell, one of our assistant principals, kind of takes the charge with our Tier 1 committee. And he was doing all these things in single committee meetings at one point. They have branched off and gone into a few different directions now. There's a general committee meeting where we have a lot of club sponsors and various other people in the school coming together to kind of talk about how we are serving our kids across the board with the committees and clubs and things that we have. We have a celebration committee, and I'm not going to read those points, but the focus there is exactly like it says. It's to give students props for the good work they do. And we also have a data response committee, which was the bulk of the initial work that Ryan worked on with this committee a few years ago with teachers and a variety of others, like I said. They take a look at discipline data, they took a look at trends in behavior data, and they say, okay, how do we need to respond? What seems to be kind of an uptick this month? What could we do to draw this to our teachers' minds and help them kind of respond to help kind of bring this type of behavior down? You can imagine, one of the things they end up talking about quite a bit year in and year out is cell phones, right? It's there. They're in our schools. We need to talk about it. And our response has to kind of evolve as our understanding and of that technology kind of moves along. So anyway, that's Tier 1 committee. Tier 2 committee, Joe talked about that a little bit. We have a very, very similar approach. It has 2 responses, and Angie Schoonover leads that in our building. One is simply to monitor the Tier 2 interventions themselves as a whole. The question is, are these interventions working? They don't talk about specific kids during that part of the meeting. This is the intervention. Is it working? What does our data tell us? And the other part is, okay, now that we have had that conversation, about how well it's working kind of in mass, let's talk about a few specific kids, all right? It's monitoring specific students and saying, okay, how are we going to make recommendation for kids who need additional tier 2 or maybe more intensive supports even beyond that? So that's a function of the tier 2 committee. They meet every other Wednesday morning to go over the data and talk about the interventions. And this is how we track that for the tier 2 committee meeting. You can see the different tier 2 interventions that we have up here. The number, I didn't explain that too carefully in the slides, so I'm going to do it right now. There are 49 kids for the skill building group who were referred to that throughout the year. 29 students responded for a response rate of 59%. Response means that the targeted behavior that the kids showed that got them into the skill building group stopped as a result of doing it. And so you can see this is for the entire last school year. We have some interventions that are incredibly successful. Some that are not as successful as others. And in some ways, this is because the behaviors for intensive skill building group and skill building group are a little bit more intense than, referring a kid to something like check and check out, right? A referral pops up, a little suspension pops up, and you think, okay, well, let's get this kid into a relationship with them in the building a little bit more purposefully. We find that that's pretty successful. But some of the more kind of chronic and problematic behaviors that our kids engage in from time to time, they take a little bit more work, right? And you're not going to see this immediate, quick turnaround. So that's what you see there in the data. But overall, we're pretty happy with the overall response rate that you see there on the bottom. Academic support. One of the things that this has gone through just so many revisions over the past 4 years at Centennial. But we moved our academic support classes for Algebra 1 and English 103. These are just the examples I'm giving you now. We moved that to lunch periods so that we could refer kids immediately to this support during that study hall. And Joe referenced something similar too. And what we found that we could do here during this time is not just say, well, look, in Algebra 1, your grade is kind of dipped to a D, or it's dipped to not passing. And so we are going to put you in an additional class for support. We found that overall, we didn't have huge success rates with that. And so we got the idea that we wanted to do something that was a little bit more responsive and allowed the kids to show success and get out of the intervention, right, if they really improved. We wanted them to have a way to, a goal to move towards, right? Not just be in this class for the rest of the semester, even if they showed improvement. And so what we ended up doing was working in 2-week cycles. So our teachers would sit there, our freshman team teachers would gather in a meeting and they would say, okay, look, when we take a look at over the last unit, we see that our students are struggling with this specific standard in our classes. So what we're going to do is we're going to find those kids who seem to be struggling the most, and we're going to refer them. We're going to take them out of their study hall. We're going to plug them into an Algebra 1 or an English 103 study hall instead for 2 weeks, specifically to focus on that standard. And this is one of those ways that standards-based grading has been really influential for us to help us identify exactly what interventions our kids should get. So instead of saying that, okay, well, on Unit 2 in algebra, you guys, your average over all the assignments and all the things we gave you was a D-. We're going to give you an intervention. And so the study support teacher could say, okay, well, you got a D. Why did you get a D? How did that work? What we can say now is factoring. The standard is factoring. Your averages for all the assessments that are linked to factoring are showing us that you really need support in that. You can tell the support class, the support teacher that that's where we need support. And we'll see how the success for the kids goes as a result of that. And so I'm just giving you one example. This is data that our freshman teachers put in on their teams. And you can see during their team time, our teachers are tracking the entrance scores. You see that in the first column there. The blacked out column are the standards. And I blacked out there the blackout column is just that way. On the left, we've zeroed out the students' names. And so you can see that on average, students for this period that you're seeing tracked here averaged a 1.4 for their entrance score on standard 1.2. And their exit score after the 2-week period on average was 2.57. They were getting targets specifically on that standard. And we found that seems to be a good way. Now, we did this all of second semester last year, and we'll continue to play with this as we move on. Oh, it's out of a 4. Yes, right. And so that's using standards-based grading, as you guys might remember from earlier, talks that we've done, is based on a 4-point scale, right? A basic 4-point rubric. And so, yeah, 2.57 isn't. It's passing. It's a high C, mid C average. So that's what it is. All right. Good. The last thing I'll say is, I think this is the last slide I have before, nope, I lied. Honors support. So I just want to talk about this a little bit. Harris, you asked a question earlier of Dr. Taylor about AP, you know, and how much you say, why might it be the case that our AP enrollment and scores seem to be going up a little bit? And I think part of that also is that we have targeted interventions that we work on, a lot of tracking that we put in place for kids who are in, and specifically low SES and our African American students who are in our honors classes. Our counselors are working with those kids. They're helping to push those kids and encouraging those kids to move on, right, to higher and higher levels of rigor as they move through school. And so you can see kind of the criteria that both Joe and I use at Central, right, for that. And we both have slightly different ways of tracking it. Again, I've taken student names off this, but our counselors work, and I really want to give our counselors props. They work diligently. I mean, if you look at the data that our counselors are tracking on a regular basis, every week they're taking a look at how our students are doing, our low SES and African American students in our honors classes. They're tracking their grades, the name of the course, the staff member, and if their grade is a D or below, they're putting it in here, and they're keeping track of the interventions that those kids are getting over time, so that there is a record, and you can just say, okay, well, go find the teacher for help, go find the teacher for help, go find the teacher for help. That's not going to do it. We have to have a more kind of growing way, right, week in and week out to help our kids, and this is how we track that. It's also a way just to work, to make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure that kids are not falling through the cracks. I'm not saying right now that we don't have kids that we miss occasionally, right? But we're trying hard to make sure that we do that, that happens as little as possible, right, with our tracking. And this is the last slide I'm saying for the moment. Something also that Joe and I are working on both campuses is a way to specifically target and help students who wish to move on and who have the potential to move on to highly selective universities, the elite colleges and universities in the country. And so you can see this. I'm not going to explain this in great detail. You can see it. You can read it along. But we began this last year, and it is something that we're going to continue to kind of develop as we move forward. But the idea is that a student who wants to move on to a really high-level university needs a specific type of support and encouragement and information that a kid who's here in this community and is looking at a lot of other universities might not need. And so we need to make sure that we are focusing our efforts on helping those kids. And so this is our attempt to do this. I want to be clear that this is open to any student, right, who wants to move on to these universities. We aren't looking to exclude as we go through this process. So anyway, with that said, I think I'm transitioning now to our early warning system information. And Angie and Jonathan are next.
So at the high school level, last school year, we knew that we needed to find something to catch some of our students who were struggling with behavior or academics early on. And so we implemented what's called the early warning system. So a little background about the early warning system. Basically, it's developed through research from the National High School Center in Chicago. And there are three main points to the early warning system, or three key things to it. The first one is that it uses readily available data in terms of attendance, discipline, test scores, credits. It emphasizes the need to be fluid within your systems of support that you provide for students, and so continuously monitoring students' progress in those areas. And it also, the key thing is that it helps schools identify intervention needs for students early on. And so the early warning system is not an actual intervention for students. It's a way to identify students early on who are in need of intervention. So what we did is Jonathan and I worked last summer on disaggregating some of the data that we had from students 8th grade year from Jefferson, Franklin, and Edison. And from that, we used attendance, discipline, test scores, and grade data. And we went through that information and we identified students who hit 3 or 4 of those targets. We had set specific criteria for those students, and we identified then students who hit 3 or 4 target criteria. And these are the numbers that we had. We had a total of 55 students across both schools who were identified. You can kind of see the demographic breakdown on this slide. So what we did is after we identified those students, the key thing about the early warning system that kind of sets it apart from some of the other things that we were doing or the other data that we were looking at is we held parent meetings over the summer. And so we would call families in and students in, and we would meet with them. And during that meeting, we wanted to make sure that students had a fresh start coming into high school, but we also wanted to make sure that they were provided the support early on that they may need. So we held those meetings. Once the school year started, we made sure that those students were connected into the interventions that Greg and Joe spoke of earlier. So we, they met with the problem-solving teams. They were connected to some of the tier 2, tier 3 behavioral interventions. We had our TISA get involved. We connected them to the academic support classes, and we made sure that the teams were provided the information so that they could begin with interventions early on with those students.
So as we were looking at things, as we talked about earlier, the criteria that we were using, grades, discipline, attendance, Explorer scores, we then decided, well, in order to judge the success of this program, then we need to look at those triggers that we qualified from middle school and see how they did with their data from high school. So as we combined both high schools, some of the outcomes that we've noticed were 67% of students that were part of the early warning system are being promoted to 10th grade. So that also reflects the retention rates that are at both Central and Centennial and their decrease that we've seen with that. So the freshman retention rate at lows at both schools, part of this attributes to that. 51% of students either maintained or improved their rate of attendance. We know that attendance in high school is more of a struggle than in grade school and middle school, so we are happy to say that at least 51% of our students were able to maintain or improve their attendance. As we look at things in the future, we'll have more recommendations for how we can even raise that up. And 69% of the students either maintained or improved their rate of discipline referrals. So approximately 70% were able to either maintain their discipline referral rate or reduce that, thus increasing their likelihood of being more successful in high school as well. When we look at the overall program, we're able to divide things into some strengths and some limitations of the program and what we needed to change for this current year that we're working on. Some of the strengths included early identification of struggling students, like Angie stated. Overall improvements in behavioral and attendance for individual students as we look at an individual case study of each kiddo, and continued decrease in freshman retention rates, like I mentioned earlier. However, although we did see some success with that, we did also notice some limitations. And when we notice those limitations, those are things that we are trying to currently improve on for this current school year so we can see even greater success for our early warning system for next year. Some of those limitations are simply personnel, funding, and research-based high school interventions, especially in the area of attendance, and really focusing on how we can use our TISAs, how we can really increase the attendance rates, and then increase academic achievements since students are in school more often. So changes for this current school year, Angie and I have already started and began those conversations, the data tracking, the meeting with families, and we're getting them all prepared for the upcoming school year. And what we've been able to do for this school year is have more targeted identification criteria, including students who have hit 2 or 3 targets. But then we also noticed last year that sometimes a kiddo would hit 1 target, but since we only focused on students last year, we had 4 criteria. Since we only focused on those kids that hit 3 or 4 of the flags, then we may have missed a student who had extreme needs in just 1 category. So this year we're looking at students meeting 2 or 3 criteria in our current system, as well as students who have strong needs in one of our individual criteria areas. And then what we're doing is looking at the fluidity of our system, making sure that just because students are transitioning from middle school and may have high needs currently, that we're not missing out on students who may have high needs after first semester that weren't part of our data set coming from middle school. May have been very successful in middle school, maybe struggling in high school, and we need to be able to focus our efforts on them as well. And then we're also going to have the addition of move-in students if warranted. We know that we do have somewhat of a transient population in our district, so those students who are moving into our district or transitioning between high schools, being able to track that more so that we know exactly who's coming in and how we can support them. And then also the development of a team that systematically monitors our students. I know at Centennial they're working with a problem-solving team to be able to monitor those students. We work with our student services team, but really kind of getting a case manager for each one of those kiddos so that we can really track and have that relationship piece with them and improve their success.
Great. All right, thanks. There's, I want to clarify one thing too. When you take a look at the success rate, right, 67% you saw on an earlier slide of these students are moving on, right, to their sophomore year. That's 2/3. As a retention rate by itself, it's not the most impressive thing. But keep in mind that this system is designed specifically to support those students' needs, who are showing signs that, they're going to struggle in high school, and they may have a hard time moving on with their class and moving on towards graduation. So we'll have to track this over time to see really where that goes. But 67% of a population that may not be moving on to sophomore year is something that we're saying, okay, it's a good starting point. Let's see where this goes from here. All right. So I just wanted to put that context out there quickly. Now, with that said, Joe and I are both going to talk a little bit about student voice. And I don't know how much, we could talk about this in a variety of different ways. What you see up here on this slide are the different ways that we kind of actively try to go out and get an understanding of where our students are. So we have a senior exit survey. You guys have seen data from that in the past. We have a graduate survey that we get back. And we just got, 2011 data, 12 data back recently. Illinois Youth Survey, we did that for the first time. It's a survey that's done all throughout the entire state. It's voluntary, but it's kind of a standard survey that you can use to compare yourself to students across the state. It has all sorts of questions about student behavior patterns and feelings about school and beliefs about where they're going to go post-high school, those types of things. We have student ambassadors, two newly sworn-in ambassadors in front of you right now. And we have different ways of actively going out and getting student voice. So in about 10 seconds, I'll just tell you at Centennial for last year. So for you, we're part of that a little bit. We worked a little bit with student voice groups. I pulled together kind of leaders and committee members and some at-large students as part of a kind of a every other week committee meeting that I work with students to talk about what's going on in the school, how can we improve the school, what are different ideas, and I could talk about specific things that we've had in place there. But they have helped to put some pretty creative ideas in place for how we can help get more students kind of involved and positive and thinking well about things going on at Centennial. So that was very general, but Joe.
Really, I don't have much to add. And I would say one thing to say in general about student voice is Greg and I both have talked repeatedly with each other and in the midst of all of our day-to-day and daily grind sort of jobs. When we talk about student voice and how we've gained student voice, and when we talk about the information that we get from students, those are highlights. Those are the things that we really say, man, if our job was this, what a great, fantastic, wonderful, 100% of the time job it would be if we simply just had that. So the importance of getting student voice and the various ways of trying to get student voice, those are going to probably expand just because we enjoy it so much. Okay. All right. So professional development plans, Dr. Taylor talked about that, and what we have is a curriculum instruction and assessment committee, or CIA committee, and that's been in place for a few years. It started under Dr. Wiegand when she was an assistant superintendent. And the PD, or that committee said for PD, for both high schools, we needed to make sure it was job embedded, meaning that it meant something to the teachers, and teachers were going to be able to take the information and use it and incorporate it, and it wasn't going to be a one-shot deal. Had to be created in collaboration with the teachers, so that instead of just some people outside of the classroom thinking they knew what needed to happen, we actually had teacher voice on this. We needed to have a plan for evaluating the effectiveness of that PD, and then it had to be aligned to the big three in our district. Our instructional framework across the district is the gradual release of responsibility. That began at the high schools a few years ago. We needed to step back up to the plate on that. Professional evaluation plan, of course, that's for all certified staff, and so it needs to be aligned to that. And then starting really heavily last year, it needs to be aligned to our culturally responsive education work that we have with Dr. Fergus. So at Central, oops, what did I press? There we go. At Central, our professional development plan looks a little bit like this. We have aligned the gradual release of responsibility stages or components. I don't like to call it stages because really you can enter into the process at any point, to the Danielson domain components. And so we did this with teachers, and we actually went through and did walkthroughs of the classrooms and had the CACs doing paired walkthroughs of teachers' classrooms and trying to take some data on when can you see some examples of the 4 stages of GRR. And then we really intimately became familiar with all the components and the characteristics of the components of the Danielson framework. And then we just matched it up. So our teachers will be talking about GRR, talking about the alignment to their own evaluation system, especially when it comes to engaging students in learning and using assessment and instruction. Our teachers will go through sessions led by their CACs, so their content area chair leaders, as well as their peers. And then we'll have in October a special emphasis on group work, because what we see at the high school is, group work can be loosely defined, as in teachers say, okay, students work in groups, and I think our student ambassadors have had that. That's interesting. We have some teachers who keep students in the same working groups for quite a bit of time. We have teachers who purposely make groups based on what students' needs are. So we really need to work with our teachers on what productive group work is. We also are going to make sure that purposely through our PLC and our late start meetings, that our teachers, when they're meeting to look at student data, and they're trying to decide on the now what, so what do we do with this data after reviewing it, that they will actually purposely incorporate their professional learning from the professional development into that. CRE, we are going to continue to hold our monthly meeting, but and this was really pretty neat, last spring, you talk about defined autonomy. So there were some things we've always done with PLC and late starts that have come about from when I took 60 teachers over a period of 2 years to actual PLC training back in 2008 and 2009. And so we've used these documents that teachers helped create, but we have now evolved. And so gave them a little bit of defined autonomy in the spring. So each PLC Wednesday late start group has revised their protocols on how they're looking at student data and student work and what they're doing with it. But they also, in addition, because of the work we did last year with Dr. Fergus's material, as part of that defined autonomy, so the definition of that, was that they also needed to make sure that they were paying attention to culturally responsive education pieces. So instead of just talking about a class as a whole or a course as a whole, they really needed to pay attention to who was being successful and who wasn't based on demographic populations. This, again, I present you another slide you can't read, but it's an example of when it comes to the evaluation component of PD. This is a very detailed plan for how we intend to enact and evaluate as we go along and be able to react accordingly in our further PD planning. So it's not just let's get through the year and then see how it went, that each session and each time and each component will be able to evaluate that plan.
All right, thanks, Joe. At Centennial, our approach to professional development is very similar. I've worked with my department chairs, with our CACs. Honestly, it was probably beginning in November on, and it was a constant at our meetings, revising and thinking and going about them. And so what you see is what we've collectively come up with. They've worked with their departments too. They would bring feedback back and so on. So it was a really collaborative process, and it's one that our teachers and we all have a lot of pride in. We're happy with what we've come up with for this coming year, and we'll see where it goes. But you can see the goals here. It's not only to, of course, increase teacher effectiveness on our evaluation instrument, which was new last year for everybody, but also to decrease the learning gaps between demographic groups in our school. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to measure that as we go on. You can see content of PD strands. I'm not going to read the bullets there at all, but I am going to focus on just the fact that we came up with these are the things that we want in all of our PD strands. And these are the things, and then underneath that are the individual topics, all right, that different teacher-led sessions are going to be on throughout the year, okay? So, yeah, that was a very quick overview of that. We're going to evaluate this in a lot of different ways, but I talked about over here, number 2, how we're going to focus on decreasing some of these gaps, of course, that are there. And one way we can do that is to help us kind of track our data a little bit better. Take a look at outcomes there on the right-hand side. I'm not going to read the left-hand side of the PowerPoint. But on the right-hand side here, you can see the outcomes that we want to see. On Wednesday mornings, our teachers collaborate. And the format that you see here is only an example. I made these numbers up for the purpose of illustrating a point, actually back for our staff last semester. But I'm showing it with you here now. Our teachers came up with this idea. So on our Wednesday mornings, they would give a pre-assessment at the beginning of the year. It's one of the first things our teachers are going to do as a result of their Wednesday morning work. They are going to collect that data back and say, okay, how did our kids do? And average that out and say, okay, this is going to be our goal now for this unit. And they will set that goal, and then the end of the semester data, they'll see where they go. And so each of our course teams will set a goal like this, and if you ever want to see what those goals are, sometime when you're over at Centennial, stop by and ask me. I'll be happy to share the goals with you. So these were teachers deciding that this is a focus that they want to have, and they want to track their data throughout the year and hold themselves accountable. And I have to, give them props for that. I said on this slide back here that I was not going to talk about individual strands, and I only slightly lied. The very last bullet references youth literacies, okay? And I just want to talk about that because it's a bit of, it's a bit of educational jargon, I suppose. And without a little bit of explanation, that strand might be hard to understand. The idea behind youth literacies is based on the idea that all of our students, in a variety of ways, show complex intelligences. They are smart kids who do a lot of incredibly smart things day in and day out. And only some of those smart things we value in our school system, without getting too complex about it. We know our school systems are geared towards the norm, and often our school systems are geared towards more white and more middle-class values. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of other really smart things going on in our school system that aren't put in positions of privilege. In fact, there are. And so youth literacies is designed to say, look, our kids are doing a variety of other things that are really smart, and we need to find a way to bring those things in the classroom to honor those intelligence that our kids have. So it's based on multiple literacies idea that has been out in education for decades, and in this case, it's specifically working on youth and youth culture. And so I could talk a lot about that, but and this is something that we all are learning about. So nobody at Centennial, certainly not me. Nobody's an expert on this, but it's something that we are actively learning more about to help us better understand how we can kind of honor and understand our students. We went to a workshop, a voluntary workshop on a Saturday that they didn't get any pay for back in May. We had 17 teachers go. They deserve a good shout out for that. And then throughout the summer, they have worked, some with pay, some without pay, to do two things really. Think about how they might begin to develop some of these concepts into their curriculum and their instructional practices across their curriculum. But we also have some literacy support classes that we're putting in place next year specifically geared towards this concept. And so this is a new idea. I don't have data that I can show you, right, to talk about how we've tracked it and the success that we've seen, but it's a new idea. And with that, I think we have finished our presentation. So there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what?
You couldn't
Actually,
bring it up,
Joe,
Doug. Even
that was.
senior.
We're going to go through it again. Let's go back to the beginning here really quick. All right. No, okay. So.
Okay, is it time for board comment or, Christine, did your hand go up?
Well, it was gonna be, it wasn't, but it can be now. So first, you're talking about all these supports for kids who need help. Got me to thinking, we had an exchange student a couple years ago, and she actually just showed up this past weekend to visit. And one of the things she said I thought was really nice. She said she really liked learning here more than learning in Germany, where she's from. That she learned more here than she learns in the schools in Germany, which I thought was really strange because you always hear those German schools, right? But she said no, that you don't. And one of the reasons is because the teachers care more here. And I don't know if that's universal across the United States, but it certainly was universal in our schools here. And so that was a great compliment, but partly because there was all these things going on where teachers are watching out for the kids. And here's a kid who struggles in English, and they helped her a lot. And she really appreciated that. But my question that I was actually going to ask is, as you go through these tiers of intervention with the kids, how much of there is there of, if you get to the second tier, you should have documented all sorts of interventions in the tier before, and then if you make it to the top tier, there should be even more, documentation of interventions. And how much are we holding people accountable to make sure that all the interventions they could were done at each tier?
Right. To kind of go back a little, just before I answer that, I want to remind everyone that Tier 2 is based on data. So when a student presents the data that they need a Tier 2 intervention, they get the Tier 2 intervention. We do, as part of that, go back to see what has been done, but we don't require, before that Tier 2 intervention that the kid is showing is needing, we don't require that is done,
But
right?
if there's
So,
gaps, how do you?
so what happens is we actually have, over the years, tried various different ways, different forms, handwritten files, all that sort of thing. Last semester at my school, so I don't know how Greg does it, but with the advent of Google Docs, or is that right? So Google Docs, right? So we are able to go in, and for freshmen, sophomores anyway, we're able to see what those teachers. So a report's done every week. It comes in from IT. It automatically creates folders and files for kids on Google Docs based on their grades and their data. The freshman and sophomore teams are able to go in, look and see whose name has popped up, go in, click the box, oh, I made a phone call to that parent, I did this, all these sorts of things that the teachers normally do as far as interventions at a Tier 1 level. So 2 weeks ago I met, and this is Will Aldridge who did this for us as part of his internship that he did, his administration internship. So 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, maybe it was in last week, I met with Will, and he's working and developing in the next week a system to try to do that school-wide, with the concept also now including that simply because I'm a teacher of so and so, I'm not an island unto myself, and the student, it's not the only classroom that a student's in, and sometimes I need to find out, how's the student doing in other classrooms, and what have other teachers tried, and that sort of thing. And we don't have that team concept across the entire high school like they do at the middle level. And including at middle level, when I was there, a lot of what was called Encore, still called Encore at the middle level, those teachers were always sort of jealous that they weren't on the teams because there was a communication gap there. So here, we're hopeful that we all will come together as a teaching staff around our students in even better and more in a positive way in tracking those Tier 1 interventions. So that's a short answer, hopefully.
I'll add just a comment too, and this is across all levels, is that the expectation in Tier 1 is that 75 to 80% of the students are responding. So the example that Greg gave earlier about factoring, right? That if you had in your class, if I was looking at your class, you're the teacher, and I would see that 75 to 80% of your students are not getting it, so that's more of an adult intervention versus having all those students go into Tier 2. And the same type of thing for behavior, right? If that many students are having to leave the class for behavior issues, it becomes more of how can we support you as the adult then in addressing some of those things. So that's one piece that's always looked at as well.
Yeah, that's great. The only thing that I'd like to add to, it's a great question, Christine. I'm glad you asked it, because it points to the very real struggle with this, right? So I was talking about, with the factoring example, Algebra 1 students. To be blunt, our freshman teachers have absolutely found that there are more students who would benefit from interventions than we can provide those interventions for. That's not to say that we have we have a bunch of students failing who aren't getting those interventions. But my point is, just because you're failing doesn't mean that you need an intervention of some sort, right? That we can help you. And so to give a little bit of an anticipatory nod to a presentation that's about to come up, one of the limitations we have at Centennial is space, right? We have to make class sizes a certain size for these support sections because you don't have space during 4th and 5th hour lunches to spread kids out, throughout the entire building. So we can have, smaller class sizes for those types of group interventions. That's one. Another reality is it's a fast-paced job. And so sometimes with some of the behavioral needs that might trigger some of the behavioral interventions, if I'm an assistant principal and it's the AP's job and they do a great job plugging kids into these interventions, but if I am going to be gone one day for the week and I come back and I have a whole bunch of referrals and then I have a crazy day and I have a little bit of an investigation and some teacher evaluations to do during that week, it could be tough to immediately refer kids in to the interventions they need at the moment that they need it based off behavior. And it can slip a little bit. It's not to say that later down the road you don't catch up, but there is a lag time there from time to time, and it is a real, it's just real. So those are the challenges we have, for sure. It's a good bunch.
So Greg made me think of something too. When I say school-wide, I mean school-wide. So if Will is able to successfully get this going before the school year starts, or even a little bit after the school year starts, we've made a commitment administratively that we're going to put our interventions in there as well. Because that's another communication gap that's always happened between teachers and administrators, is teachers wondering, what have administrators done to help this student, right? Are they always just expecting me and that sort of thing? So, and there are times when, and it has nothing to do with discipline referrals, although clearly administrators deal with discipline referrals, but we're not, just communicating out our relationships that we have with kids and are able to work with kids beyond the discipline referral. There's just no real good system of communication. Like Greg says, it's very fast paced. So we're hoping that that we'll close the communication gap, and that students in our school will start seeing that really we are all there for all the kids, is what our hope is.
Jamar?
Okay, just a couple of points here. The first one is the advanced placement classes, where we have the mean score. I see that we're, over the last few years, we're adding, like, looking at African American students, we're getting more students in, but the mean score is going down per year. Do we have any reason or why we think that may
in
be?
actually a month or two, we'll be presenting some of the information. We have talked about how we're going to increase the rigor across the board in our honors classes, and we have plans to bring that to you and some ways of doing that. But I think the first step is getting more in, truthfully. I think if we can get more in and start opening the door so people start feeling comfortable taking advanced placement classes, African American students, other students, we've made progress. The actual increase of the scores becomes a bigger system altogether. So, decreasing a gap that might be there that is bigger in a certain way takes longer, right? And a student could take an AP class their junior year. They can take it their freshman year, honestly. We don't generally have many. But it's going to take us a little bit more time. But so our first goal is to get more in. The second push right now is heavy to make sure we do better once we're in there. But they both have to come together to get that award. And that's, again, I'm trying, got 2 more years that I have my own personal goal to get that. And so hoping we do.
Okay. And is this number of students, like 29 students, that's between both the high schools?
This is a district, yes.
In the entire district, so even middle school?
Middle schools don't take
Just
AP.
high school?
Yes.
Okay. Then the second question was at Central, kind of goes in line with Dr. Weig was talking about. When we look at the math advisory, I see a lot of the tier and tier 2. Math advisory, we look at, when you say respond, you said it meant respond positively. Only about 30% of those students are responding positively to the math advisory. So what are we looking to do differently this year than we did last year?
Right, so the math advisory actually, Greg actually mentioned it in his response as well. He talked, and Judy also talked about, sometimes a larger number of students need an intervention, and then it becomes not a tier 2 intervention, right? And that was what we were feeling all year with this math advisory. More students could benefit than we were putting in there. And so it actually goes along with the conversation that Laura just talked about, which is when you increase, a rising tide floats all boats, right? So we are actually changing the math advisory to support all students, no matter what their math class is, during that lunchtime. And then I guess the second thing is we're adding, it's teaching hours. So it's not just a supervision period for those teachers. I mean, that is actually a teaching assignment. Teachers are expected to plan for those students in that intervention. They're expected to look at the students' data. They're expected to talk about concurrent support with the curriculum and that sort of thing.
Okay. All right, so with that said, the good points are, I am excited to see that both the high schools are coming together with a similar plans to move students forward with the different tiers, especially on the behavioral side, because that'll help us continue to bring our discipline numbers down. But more importantly, on the academic side, because I know early on, as a board member, I would see, like, when we get expulsions, and we would see students with very, very poor grades, and it was consistent when we get their entire records. And had they not done that one event to get them to that expulsion hearing, they would have continued on this cycle without having somebody really grab them and move them forward. And so I'm very glad to see that we are starting to pull students on this early warning system, because that meant a lot, and I mentioned that a lot early on every time we had these expulsions, and I would see that had we grabbed a student early on, they may not have gotten to that point. And then the last piece, the student-teacher mediation. I'm glad to see that we're doing that, and that it's actually working in our schools. Oh no, it's not working. What? No. What?
I would be so remiss if I did not point out that, and Angie, if I missed something, let me know. Ondine Gross is a facilitator of those student-teacher mediations at Centennial. She has taken the data that she's done over the past 3 years. She's done it as part of our targeted intervention system. She's presented at national conferences. She's gotten some awards for that. And she has recently actually put in a proposal for a book that's been picked up by a publisher. And she's in the middle of writing, and it will be published, the work that she has done for interventions. And so Ondine's a rock star, and Ondine, I hope she's listening because she deserves it. She deserves the props.
Well,
Thanks.
Well, I'm definitely glad that we have her and the staff to take that on, because I think that's a very important piece to mend relationships here, growing relationships again, just to mend those relationships for both the student and the teacher, so there's a better understanding, and just usually both sides just want to get a chance to state their case, and that usually can be the end of it. So I'm glad that we're actually having those, and the data shows that it's working. So let's keep that going.
Paris.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to thank you guys for presenting this, because I think, largely for me, I know that all resources that we allocate to students are important. But for me, in particular, students that need some extra help and resources, that largely for me is moving the needle, in terms of the job that we do. So I wanted to thank you, for presenting that. In addition to, looking at the marketing of this, I didn't know if we've explored opportunities for students to participate or just even sit into some of the AP classes, just to get a feel for how the class is going, as well as even post some type of exercises or problems in those classes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. Actually, I can't say that was actually right there on my thoughts. We just met recently, though. We're talking about doing I think it's called an AP Combine. We're talking about a lot more promotional things during the winter break, and one of the things we can add to that very nicely is to say, why don't you go run through some classes and see. So I think you'll see a lot more with some of the efforts, and like we said, getting them in first part and then raising the scores is what we need to really be doing. So thanks for giving us that idea.
Anytime, thanks.
Just a quick question. Something Joe said about the use of Google Apps for storing documents. Have we looked at, one, compliance with FERPA, and two, just general privacy with that stuff?
Behind the curtain.
Come out into the light.
Yeah, I would point you to google.com/edu/privacy.html, and yeah, they spell it out pretty clearly. They're FERPA compliant.
Okay.
Our data is our data, and they don't sell it. So, yep.
I would figure it. Just checking.
Sure. Yep.
Good question. Yes, it is.
Okay, looking at slide 33, support for enrollment in highly selective universities. I think this is meant well. I think that this is one of the things that high schools like to see. Most school districts like to brag that they sent 10% of their student body to the Ivy League, or they sent 20 kids to Stanford and MIT, or 5 kids to the University of Chicago. But some of my concerns as I look over this, the criteria are 90% or above on the standardized tests, or 10% of the weighted grade point average, which is actually a good thing, because you're capturing the kids who are in the AP and the honors classes and maybe are, I don't want to say struggling a little bit, but maybe they're getting a B or a C in that class when they could be getting an easy A in a regular class. So it's good that we're challenging them, and it's good that they're not being penalized for taking the challenge. Are these kids self-referring, or are these kids that we're pulling in?
Yeah, great question. And the answer to the question is yes. So at the last year when we started this, every kid who hit the criteria, right, we pulled in for a conversation. And our counselors did outreach, right, to families so they were aware of it. And then kids could decide, okay, good, so I hit this criteria, I've been pulled in. Do I want to participate and kind of actively work with my counselor on this? Yes, here's how we're going to do that. But as our counselors are moving on into this year, it is something that we are going to universally, make known. This is what we do at Centennial. And so if anybody who doesn't hit this criteria wants, this type of support, great. We have to recognize, of course, that in high school, you might not hit this criteria as a freshman based off your Explore scores, or as a sophomore based off of Plan scores, but kids grow, right? And they do better as they move along. And so, we have to open this up for others as well. So it really is, yes, it's both.
Okay, well, there are two reasons I asked this question. Number one, if you look at my son who lived on the CDF list from 6th through 9th grades, I'm not convinced he would have met either criteria because he was so uncaring of his schoolwork for so long. Now, he did get it together in 10th grade, and he did very well after that. In college, his school is on trimesters. He has now made the dean's list 5 out of the last 6 trimesters. And he has 2 more years to go. He's hopefully on target to graduate in 4 years. It's looking very positive there.
Sure.
But I'm not sure that my son would have been one of the kids who met that criteria, but he's doing very well in his college career. The other thing is, do they have to be highly selective universities, or could it be any university?
Okay, I should distinguish this. That's a good point to bring up. Okay, so we have a college career counselor in both high schools, and what you are describing, right? With that last question, is something that falls under the job responsibilities already, and is already happening with under the work of our college career counselor. We have a new one at Centennial coming up, and and Joe's had one. This is the 4th year of the program, perhaps 4th year, going into the 4th year of the program. And so, if I'm a student who doesn't necessarily want to get into a high elite Ivy League university, but I really want to make sure that I'm well positioned to go to the University of Wisconsin, then absolutely, your regular counselor, right, your generalist, will refer you. Wisconsin?
You're lucky we're not throwing
It is a fine institution. U of I is good too. All right, anyway. I kind of want to sit down. Does anybody else want to sit down? Dr. Wiegand, you want to talk about University of Wisconsin?
You're fine.
No. All right. But you get the idea. Our college career counselor is their work is to help kids with that, even if it's not, the creme de la creme of in the country.
Okay, because here's my concern, and I'll go ahead and state it right now on the record. Take a kid who's 70 to 80% on one of these tests, or maybe 70 to 80% in their weighted grade point average. We do not just have highly selective colleges and universities in this nation. The historically black colleges and universities in particular are very adamant that you do not have to have a specific ACT or SAT score to attend their schools.
Absolutely.
And they are also not restricted to African American students. They are welcoming white students, Hispanic students, and Asian students. So, we want to make sure that it's not just the kids who may be highly motivated and possibly would be doing this work on their own, but any student who's interested in college is getting the supports they need to complete the application and get in.
Yes, and that's exactly what we mean to do. So I don't know what else to say besides that, except that's what our college career counselor is designed to do. We want to make sure kids aren't falling through the cracks. And so this is one way to kind of specialize some support that's already existing for some of our students.
Well, and especially for maybe some students whose families have not attended college in the past and are not aware of everything you need to do.
Actually, that's a great point. That is where this idea came from. This idea came from some students, at least in our building, at Centennial, who are moving on. Actually, one of the students was publicized in the News Gazette and will be attending Northwestern this coming year. She's a great kid. She comes from a family where she needs a little bit of extra support to move on to Northwestern, and she got it. And so we asked ourselves, how can we find a way to do this more systemically on our campuses? And that's what this is meant to do. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Guys, questions, comments? You don't have to, but if you have something you'd like to say.
I noticed that a lot of things, just like in general, that there's a lot of things that what teachers can do for students, and I think it's also important to, I know it sounds very simple, maybe a little silly to teach the students how to ask for help, because I realize with my own brother, he wouldn't ask for help, and sometimes like even myself, I would be hesitant to ask for help because it's kind of, I mean, maybe because it sounds like a stupid question or I just missed a chance. So I think it's just good that we teach our students and my peers to ask, be like confident to ask for help in general.
Good point. Right. You guys are doing great work. I mean, when I think about when listening to the 47-page conversation, I listened through majority of it because it was so long. I'm kidding. When you talk about the challenges that our freshmen are having in math, is there any correlation to what's happening at the middle school level, that they're not coming prepared for high school? Because what made me think about that was, you know, when we hear about our kids attending Parkland, how, you know, maybe they're not prepared for junior college, so.
Angela's speak to you, but I think one of the things that we've talked about before is the disconnect that we've had with ISAT and with the requirements of high school. And so try and remember that. It's been a couple conversations ago, but our state set a bar for K-8, and it was a much different bar than the high school ACT bar and what we go by. And so what Common Core and what the increase of rigor should be doing for us, and this is where I hope, again, even with the AP scores and all that we've been talking about, once we get the Common Core truly in, as we have been doing, and once we now have, we'll have ACT Aspire, we have the new PARC assessment, those should level off. But the truth is, they've been going for two different targets until recently when the state said, oh, so high school's going for this target, shouldn't we have K-8 going for the same target? And so part of it's just getting around that and getting back around that.
And I would agree. Is this on? Yes. A lot of the work that we're doing, your high schools are your flagships. They should be setting that standard. So we've moved to have a lot of articulation with high schools to say, where do our students need to be when they leave 8th grade? Laura's absolutely right. We've been using ISAT data, but right now we will be using the ACT Aspire, which will line students up, and we will be projecting where they should be on the placement tests as early as 6th grade. Last year was our first year where we had our 7th graders take a retired Explorer, and we did that just because Dr. Wiggin allowed us to do that. It wasn't a requirement. We sat down with our teams, we talked to them, we unpacked it, and we said, where are students right now, where are we missing the boat, and where is our curriculum either falling short, or what do we need to increase strategies and teacher preparation as far as getting students ready. So we're having a lot of conversations about that. So yeah, is it feeding from the middle school? Yes, but I think you can track that line all the way back. So we stacked some of our interventions and supports at the 6th grade in the base. We're communicating more with elementary. We're communicating more with high school, trying to be a true link in between the two. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're finally in communication.
Excellent, thank you. That just, it seemed to be, for me, it was a glaring point. And actually, the last slide, even because it was the last, wasn't the most exciting, but the youth literacies, I mean, that's really exciting. I mean, that's what we've talked about, I think, at the CAPS level, and to seeing our kids really telling us what excites them and how they want to be engaged in the learning process. So having them to lead that process was excited to see. Thank you all for the work. It's hard work, and those are long days. When I thought about the meetings and the conversations and then the teaching and the free Saturdays, and so thank you. Next item. Should we take a break before we move to this one? High school update, Dr. Weger. Just kidding.
Good evening. I believe we have members of our architectural team from Gorski Rustek and DLR here this evening, so they're going to go ahead and do a summary of the work that has been done to date and talk about, I think what most people are here to listen to, are the costs for a new Central High School and a renovated Centennial High School. So if you'd like to come to the podium, gentlemen, it'd be great.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening.
So it's been an exciting journey the last several months as we've tried to and arrived at, indeed, a plan and a program for the future of Champaign Unit Force High Schools. And so on behalf of myself and Dennis and Chuck, we wanted to say thank you for that. So in summary tonight, we have a presentation and room for questions, of course, at the end. And we're just going to kind of go through things. We're not going to delve into each and every activity that we did in the interest of time. So by all means, if you have questions at the end, please ask. So what was our task? Our task was to plan and program high schools. And so definitions are always important. Planning is the visionary collaboration that will help develop the parameters. Programming is the data, right? So all of our information has to be founded in data in order to be valuable. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move into the bulk of the presentation tonight. So what did we do? Well, we had a lot of collaborative work sessions, what we call collabs, with stakeholder groups. And stakeholder groups were, as Cedric participated, everything from students to teachers and administration and board members and kind of everybody all along the way. Really designed to examine opportunities, right, for what might lie ahead. And how could we align facilities with how you're going to deliver instruction for the 21st century for your students. And that's kind of a big task if you think about it. We met with a whole bunch of different groups, and we talked about a number of things. We talked about your vision for 21st century learning. It's not about what was right in community X or community Y. It's really what was right for Champaign now and into the future. We talked about curriculum and delivery in multiple different sessions. We talked about sustainability and energy efficiency and how the building can help in operations and perpetuity. Programming, the data quantification and what does that really mean. We talked about that through multiple sessions. And we also had, last but not least, cost workshop. How much is all of that really going to cost, or could it cost to deliver that value to the community? And so here's just a kind of a list. I'm not going to go through and read them all, but we met with lots of different groups and had many informational meetings, coordination meetings beyond the primary collab work sessions. So since last October, the group that's listed on the slide here collectively has spent more than 1,650 hours to arrive at what you're seeing tonight through these last several months. So what does it mean? What does the program look like? So we've input data, 1,700 students at each campus. The coursework and the enrollment patterns really define how your students engage the facility. And it's also based upon the patterns that you have and projections that you will have. For example, I'll show later on new coursework in computer science. And so we had to plug that in as a projection of how that might influence spatial requirements. And then we had a number of variables, of course. So there are 8 periods in a day, right? And you're going to have a utilization rate of 88%, which I'll say is more efficient than our planning standards would dictate, right? So I think, Laura, you said at one recent meeting, you said lean and mean. And this program really defines lean and mean as far as planning goes. Course offering / flexibility, this is a factor of 0.85. The closer we get to 1, really the less choice students have in electives, right? So our planning standard is 0.8. So again, lean and mean were higher than our planning standards at the beginning of the process. General class size, 28. So we're going to go through a handful of slides on particular program highlights. I had done this probably 2 or 3 board updates ago, but obviously as the information has come into greater focus, some things have changed and been enhanced, okay? So special education, a life skills lab, self-contained classrooms, small studios for breakout instruction. We'll talk more about what a studio is a little bit later, at least conceptually. A sensory room to augment their services, of course. ESL, growth. Certainly planned with their unique needs in mind. We had a great meeting with the ESL staff and talked about a lot of the differentiation and diversified instruction that needs to happen within that program. It's not one particular country, it's not one particular language, it's all of the things coming together. So they need larger space to do that so they can diversify that instruction. They need resource space so that they can accommodate student needs throughout the day. When it comes to career and tech ed, or CTE, architectural and engineering lab, business space, construction lab, culinary arts center, entrepreneurs center, metal arts or welding, all into a holistic CTE program. Enhanced music and performing arts space, auditorium for 800 at the new Central campus, band room for 225 musicians, choral room, dedicated music classroom, ensemble practice room, small practice rooms, a music library, all enhancing that fine and performing arts program. PE and athletics, 3-court competition gymnasium, an auxiliary gymnasium for those evenings when you might have 2 events going on simultaneously, or certainly for the PE activities. Open cardio lab, weight room, dedicated health safety classrooms, a new pool located at Central. Here's those new courses of study in computer science, maintenance and programming, starting in August in earnest this month. And then there's collaborative and shared space. And you've realized some of these things at your elementary schools, at your new elementary schools, and when you get to high school, it's only that much more, right? It's that much more important. So a common space, which will also double as food service cafeteria, large group presentation, small group space, different study areas, breakout spaces, and kind of what we've termed think tanks. Science, lecture lab combination in chemistry, biology, and physics, some needed storage outside of the lab space. Let's not take that dedicated instructional space and use it to store boxes of materials and experiments. Let's do that outside of the lab. Modern equipment and furniture. STEM, of course, as you know, through Booker T. Washington and other programs. Research and development lab at the high school level, envisioned to be a co-curricular space, an integrated research space. So it's an exciting opportunity building into the program. So what about those classrooms? I haven't said anything about a classroom yet, and I've saved it for the end. And so I mentioned at the very beginning definitions for planning and programming. And it's very important as we think about what the future might be that design hasn't been undertaken yet, but we have to envision what it might look like or could look like so that you all in the community can better see what that future could be, okay? So we have no new classrooms, okay? They're different. It's not, when I close my eyes and somebody says the word classroom to me, I think of my 3rd grade classroom and Mrs. Grote, who was my teacher, standing at the front of the classroom and teaching me how to read and do all those wonderful things, early literacy. And it was, desks facing forward and everybody was very disciplined. And so that vision of a classroom doesn't belong in a 21st century learning environment as we know it and as we've defined together, okay? So some snapshots of Centennial and Central High School, I apologize, some of them are a little bit dark, of your existing quote-unquote classroom spaces. And so by and large, it looks a lot like where I went to high school and might look a lot like where you all went to high school. But this program is something a little bit different. So we're calling them learning studios. And so we've prepared a couple of conceptual images. And as I've already stated, these are just concepts. And design will occur after a referendum passes, should the board put a ballot question on, and we'll hear more about that later tonight. But again, we wanted to help envision what that could be with some graphics. So this is a plan view. If we cut the top of a roof off and you were flying over in an airplane, this is what you might see, okay? And so I'll walk through what this is, and if you kind of squint a little bit, you can sort of see organizational patterns reminiscent of an industrial model of education, right? And I'll use this angled screen in the corner to point. Hopefully the laser works. There's what was a corridor space, right? And so in a value-driven 21st century solution, the corridor space has to be used for something academic. It's no longer lockers. Yes, we'll have lockers, but they aren't there anymore because this is a place for learning. And so if we look at what was a classroom space, it's a little bit different. And there are a multitude of what we call settings available. So there might be a broadcast style classroom, or there might be a more presentation style or e-mentor style classroom. These various iterations are depicted in the program as A, B, and C, and they're just placeholders. They're concepts, as I've already mentioned several times. So on the right-hand side of the slide, what we're calling the focal point concept, it's this notch that's cut out of each corner of the classroom, and what that does is essentially activate the corridor for learning in a multitude of different ways, and also allows for a focal point in the inside of the classroom space. In the center of the slide, you'll see something we're calling the think tanks, as I've alluded to in my previous slide. And there's two different iterations of that. So there's an idea studio and a boardroom style. In a more integrated approach, as was mentioned by the principals tonight, the graduated release of responsibility, and how you might differentiate instruction. Well, in an integrated concept, what might that look like for two classes in a breakout space and some space to congregate and present and things like that. In a more defined role, a more focal role, you'll see this breakout concept with maybe a divider partition behind it and a small group space in between two classrooms. So if we take our airplane view and we turn it a little bit, you'll get to see a little bit more detail of what could happen in an integrated studio. And so you can see an opportunity for students to gather and present, or work in small groups, or sit and discuss, or have an idea session, or a traditional lecture session. Obviously, formal guided instruction hasn't gone away, right? There's still a need to do that. So you need a space to do that. And all of the furniture is designed to interact with itself such that it's easy to change the space around, right? So as the activity of the moment changes, or the hour or the period, whatever the case may be, the space responds, right? Looking down into the two different iterations of a think tank concept, you can see the boardroom style to the bottom of the slide, and the think tank to the idea studio to the top of the slide, and what those arrangements might be. Various opportunities for technology certainly exist and will be planned into any design work forthcoming. And then if we look at the focal point classrooms, I've already mentioned, the broadcast media, right? So what would it look like if we had a small anchor desk and some editing stations in a classroom? How might that be different than a presentation space next door, or the opportunity to collaborate with somebody globally through Skype or other methodologies on a particular group topic? All of that could happen in this style of classroom. So I talked about activating the hallway space for learning, and how might that be? And so this image kind of captures what that is, with informal study space, some 2-on-2 space kind of masked behind here as you kind of progress down the hallway towards the other styles of spaces. An entry into what the integrated studio might look like, and how that might feel different than a high school hallway of a 20th century high school solution. So lots of opportunity to collaborate and work together, some dedicated conference space and those kinds of things. So the future is actually pretty bright if you stop and think about it. And so what's embodied in this program, I would simply characterize as opportunity. And it comes with a value, right? A real value for the students and for the teachers and for this community moving forward. But it has to be accountable, right? So it's wonderful to dream and to have a vision, but we have to have accountability in what that means. So there are measures. This was presented in a little bit different format at, I believe, the last board meeting, Stephanie, 2 weeks ago. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see your current Unit 4 high schools, and these are square footages per student. And it's comparative data, and it's good data to understand relatively where you are amongst your peers. I believe this is within the conference. So currently, Centennial High School is 141 square feet per student. Central High School is 152. All the way on the far right-hand side of the screen is Danville High School at 288 square feet per student. Well, our model here that we're presenting tonight is right in the middle. And we're at 182 square feet per student, right around 309,000 square feet for a comprehensive 21st century high school solution. Now, the asterisk there is that Centennial isn't planned to have a pool addition for obvious reasons. So the square footage is slightly different when it comes to that campus. And what might that cost? So obviously, as you contemplate putting a referendum question on the ballot later this evening, you have to know what it means from a dollar perspective. And so we've broken down each high school into several categories. At the top, you'll see direct costs on both slides, and then in the middle, you'll see some development and off-site improvement costs, at least at Central High School, and then kind of subtotals, and then furniture, fixtures, and equipment below that. And what's in furniture, fixtures, and equipment? Well, it's everything from science lab equipment to presentation material in the way of technology, and of course the furniture in the classrooms themselves. And then all the way down to an estimated total cost. Now these costs are escalated, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, to 2016. So if the board were to place a ballot question on tonight's agenda, move forward with a ballot question for November, the design process would hopefully begin in earnest to make value of all of the dollars as soon as the referendum were to pass. So let's say that it passed in November. Construction would begin in earnest, or the bulk of the construction would happen in the year 2016. So if we talk about dollars, we are not talking about them in the context of today, because obviously labor costs and material costs and those kinds of things escalate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So these are 2016 dollars. So to build a new Central High School, we're estimating $97 million, or about $316 per square foot, all in. That's all the costs associated with it. That's everything that you see on the slide here. When it comes to a reimagined Centennial High School, building construction, again, those direct costs at the top. Now, obviously, we have renovations to be considered, and there's actually more renovation than there is new construction. Different cost metrics, but $20 million worth of renovations and about 18.2 of building construction. Development costs, again, in the middle, indirect costs, furniture, fixtures, and equipment at the bottom, for an estimated total of $51,319,000. Putting them together, it's just below $150 million, exactly $148,945,462. So that seems really exact, right? And so we've done planning and programming. And what this represents is all the information that we could possibly plug into the cost model at this time. But there's obviously design exercise and a significant amount of it to happen coming forward. So what we've done is we've projected using other high school buildings that have been recently constructed and various other factors that came into our cost workshop to arrive at these numbers. Okay? And so 148,945,462. Mentioned escalation. Material and labor costs escalate annually. The rate at which they escalate is variable depending upon the economy, labor wage rates, all of those wonderful things. But on average, we're going to say it's approximately 3%. So as I've already referenced, our estimate is in 2016 dollars, future dollars, based upon when it might be bid. So if a fall 2014 referendum is not successful, we anticipate at the bottom of the slide the following increases on an annual basis. So if it didn't pass in 2014, it was run again for 2015, build in 17, we estimate approximately $4.5 million worth of increase because of that escalation cost. So on and so forth, and you can read down 16 and 17 respectively. So to maximize the budget and in turn not restrain program spaces and needed renovations, the design process we recommend should happen as soon as any referendum were to pass. And with all of that said, I'll be happy to entertain any questions, and Chuck and Dennis and perhaps Greg and Joe will join me as need arises.
Okay, I want to first ask a couple of questions of student ambassadors. So both of you are in different high schools, and so as we've all seen this for the first time, I really want to get a reaction or response from both of you as to your thoughts.
I've seen the presentation. I remember when you came into our student leadership meeting. I think I said this before, but I'm a little worried that it might be like too much technology, and I feel like if we lose that basis, I know you said it, like some of the stuff is not fit for the 21st century, but I think there's also some stuff that we should keep from the past. So like if we just keep it to technology, I think it's kind of too creepy a little bit. So yeah.
Well, thank you for, the update and everything. What I really liked about the presentation was that it was a new way of learning, and that's something that needs to happen. Kids don't learn the same way as they did in 1934 or even in 2000. A lot of things have changed, and I feel like that's necessary to take into consideration. A lot of kids are learning based on, games and, the internet and things of that nature. I feel like that's important to, take into consideration, and just the fact that things are changing. I feel like that's important. I personally really can't wait to see design of the new Central High School or even the reimagined Centennial High School, just because I feel like it'll give me something to look forward to more so. I definitely kind of see where everything kind of pulls together, but I would really like to see sort of a sketch kind of design of that. But I definitely feel like it's necessary to update our facilities and to look into the future and not just stay in the past.
Thanks, Cedric. Questions, comments, other board members? Christine?
Me? Well, I have two jobs. One is where I work, in which case I have to go around to a lot of schools in the state, and I see a lot of schools. My other job is I'm a parent, and I have a child getting ready for college, so I've been going around and seeing a lot of colleges lately. And when I look at what you presented as far as these learning studios, I see a way, we talked earlier about college readiness. This is a lot of what college is today. This is the way colleges are teaching. And yet we're teaching our kids, like Cedric just said, based on how we taught kids in 1934. And to be able to expose our kids to an environment of working together and collaborating is so exciting, that these kids are going to be able to go into these high schools and be competitive with the other high schools in our state who are already doing this and be ready for college. And what a great way to see our kids grow. I think this is just really exciting, totally out of the box from what a lot of us know. This is not what we know. But our kids are going to know and get better. And so I really appreciate all the thought that all these people went into to bring this and put this together.
So I also have a comment as well. So I'm glad to see this presentation and how we're moving forward with our educational process, because one, looking at Central's current needs, it doesn't make sense to spend this type of money and stay in the same spot essentially. So I think this is a way to get ahead of the curve, which we should be positioning our students for, given the disruptions that we see going on in every business day life. And so I think this is a great way of learning, because it essentially simulates a way for students to participate in the real world, and how thoughts and new ideas come about, how a student body can be more cognizant of the education process and have input into that, and have a facility that can adapt to the changes that we will see going forward in our lifetime. So I'm really glad to see that. I also, in looking at the cost of this too, look at it as not a cost, but an investment of what we're looking to have a return on our investment, and that is good community members and well-educated community members. So when I look at this as some of the things that I've encountered and heard in our community when we look at economic development, when we're looking at bringing businesses here, when we're looking at raising the level of rigor for our educational field. And so I am enthusiastic to see something here in Champaign come to fruition, and hope that the community supports this because I think it is paramount for our kids to learn this way. I deal with a lot of, I shouldn't say deal with, I work with a lot of students over at Parkland. And so every time when they come to my class and they're asking about entrepreneurship and technology and the different dynamic that we're going about this, I always say, well, I didn't get this, education when I was in school. And so I think this is a great way to pivot and do things differently. And it's a good way to meld the minds to execute. And that is the 21st century of education. So thank you.
Thank you, Karis. Well said. Any other comments?
I was sitting here thinking, Laura, you made a comment that like our high school should be like the flagship, or basically we need to work from them. Or who made the comment? Angela.
That's what you think.
Sorry, but we've worked on some of our elementary schools. We have New Carey Busey, and we see the collaborative learning environment. And it seems like if we don't do this for our high schools, we're sending them backwards instead of continuing. We get them there at the elementary level, and then what do? We're turning them around back to like 1930s. So thank you.
So real quick, just first of all, I saw that you had 1,690 hours of work that's been done since, in less than a year on this, and since October. So I appreciate everybody that's put some time into that. And I think all of us have felt many of those hours as board members and the staff here at the district. And I know you all have spent many more hours after you leave us. You continue to work on your off time. So I appreciate everybody that's put time into this effort. But I do want to say again, it's not just an October 2013 conversation. It's been a conversation that's been going for years. I know it's been going on since the first day I stepped in this role in 2011, and it was going on before I got here as well. So it's not something, and so I'm glad to see that we're at a point where we're starting to move forward in the process, and we're starting to move forward in conversations, what high school looks like, what's going to be put on the land. And I like this presentation in particular because it definitely shows what type of learning we can do in our district, and the things that our current buildings are limiting us from doing. The way you have the boardroom set up, the imagination spaces, and just those, that's how the real world works. When kids go to college and they get those good jobs in corporate America, that's what the workspace looks like. I know we did when we were in Chicago, we did a few tours of some groups in a building. I forgot which group it was. Some architectural firm. And that's what their workspace looks like, and that's how kids are going to start learning in the future. So why not prepare them for their future careers? It's not a lecture hall style of working anymore, and it's hands-on. For me personally, my passion is definitely the trades, and so this allows us to get more of the trades in. Because you said earlier you saw some pictures. This may look like classrooms that you went to. They look exactly like classrooms I went in because it was a classroom I went in at Centennial. And being in part of these conversations, the one thing that I always said, that I didn't get any of the trades in the school. I didn't get any of the vocations. And so we're allowing just a greater focus to be able to touch all of our students and be able to give each and every student a fighting chance after high school. And those are just some things that we just currently can't do. I know there's been lots of talk of different locations and different ideas and options. One of the great needs for a new high school is not just so much the building itself as far as how they're deteriorating over the years, but just the size alone. We're not rebuilding the same building. We're increasing size for student capacity. So if we don't do anything else, if nothing else happens, we have to have a larger building for the students that are already in our district. And so that's a driving force for us continuing to move forward in this. It's not so much all of the other extra things, but we have to have larger space. And that's something that's really it's a non-negotiable really for us, or it's not something that we can argue about or we have to even discuss, because it's a fact that none of us can hide from. And if we don't do it this year, then it's going to be another year back. I know, looking at costs, we say for a new central, a new high school would be $98 million. Well, I believe I saw a report that was 2 years ago that was at $80 million. But so we've already seen the increase of cost just over a few years. And so the further we continue to kick this can down the road, the cost is going to be higher no matter where we build, no matter how we build it. The cost is going to be higher than it is today. And so I do hope that our community does see this as something that's a positive overall for the big picture of growth of our community, and how it will bring in more opportunities to our community to build than to not build in our community, because we will be able to say and highlight some of the things that we're doing. People can see, people are visual. They'll be able to see something that's nice, beautiful, and shiny, but then we're also able to add more classes, more of the AP courses to get some of the space that we need, more of the honors courses, more of the trade courses, and so therefore we're able to put out a better student as well that's going to be highly marketable to our colleges, and people will fight for them in the job markets as they continue on in the future. And so for us as a board, we're elected to make progress and to move our district forward. And I think that we're here at this space, and I think that's what we're doing. And I think we're at a good spot for what we're doing. Again, I just thank you all for the work that you put into this, and then my fellow board members to your sleepless nights and lots of reading. But the work has just begun.
Any other comments? Lynn?
Actually, just kind of a question. Where will the lockers be located?
In a room? No. There actually be, normally, they're in clusters now. They're not down a long hallway. They're together in various pockets throughout the building.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Just a minute. Anybody else? John?
I guess just briefly, because I don't want to take a lot of time, but for Joe and Greg, what things could you do today that you would like to, that are otherwise available to you, that you cannot do for space for our students that increase their educational opportunity? What are we leaving off the table for an opportunity cost because you don't have space? What can't you do because you don't have space? That you could do,
to the microphone.
that you could do next week when school starts, if you had the space. If you
were
had
to move into the building right now.
Correct.
What would we do?
What difference does this make in your students' lives?
I think the biggest difference it would make is creating an opportunity for shared learning to happen between core disciplines in an easy way, so you didn't have this major undertaking of trying to find a certain space and a certain kind. We talked 2 weeks ago a lot about this. I think the big thing would be providing an opportunity for our students to learn. Learning should not happen in context of just, math instruction and content math instruction needs to happen, but the real true learning happens when you apply what that. And so when you apply that to new concepts, when you apply it to anything where our students would be working collaboratively, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. I think from the very moment that we started talking about this 3 years ago, it was collaboration.
Put the slide up that also has the programs on there, because I'd like for Joe and Greg to maybe address, when you talk about those programs, especially in the career and tech ed areas, which ones do you currently offer, and which ones would be added? What are new programs? I think that gets to John's question as well, right?
Okay. It's not my presentation, so. That's the end of it, right? Okay.
So let's go back up to all the way to,
Stop there.
No, okay, go, you're back.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So currently we don't have a life skills lab. We have a classroom. We'll have 2 this year because of our increased enrollment that has a stove in one room. Self-contained classrooms, we use closets or very, very small, what used to be offices in our building. Greg, I don't know what you use in your building. Same thing. Small studios for breakout instruction. There is no such thing, and we have no sensory room. Elementaries in this district have sensory rooms, so our students are coming to the high school. It's another example of coming to the high schools and having not what you've had as an
maybe highlight what a sensory room is, or maybe Dr.
Sure.
Degree.
Dr. Degree, do you want to talk about a sensory room?
Wake you guys up back there.
Good evening. Sensory room is a space that is oftentimes used by students with autism or other students with disabilities who have trouble processing specific inputs, sensory inputs. So it may be a space where kids go and either listen to music or wear noise-reducing headphones. It may be a space, in the elementary schools, they're dark painted spaces with lighting that lights up to the ceiling. So it's a very calming environment. There may be different physical activities for kids to do. It's kind of about, and the activities that may be relaxing to one student might also be heightening for another student, and vice versa. There are all kinds of things that students use to self-calm. And oftentimes we provide occupational physical therapy to students in those spaces as well. So,
Thanks. Thank you. You want to just kind of go to the next spot? Okay.
Can I, yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can talk about, and I want to go slide by slide. Can I also answer the question, and I want to just, there's a picture here which, when I hear, Greg, what would you do if you had a different space tomorrow at Centennial? There's a picture here that I want to get back, and I know we went a lot of clicking to get here, but is this it? Yes, look at the top right. That's at Central. We have a classroom that's just like that at Centennial. And so what our teachers can't do when they teach in spaces like that is be immediately responsive to their students' needs. They can't do it. If they're talking and they get into a killer conversation and the teacher says, I want to change my lesson right now, and I want to get them into small groups to workshop this idea. That's really hard to do in that classroom space in the top right. Desks are falling over one another. If you rearrange those desks, you can't because they're in those levels. And there isn't a way to instantly bring technology into this classroom and say, all right, you guys had this idea. Why don't you guys go work on this in a computer? Why don't you guys work and develop this idea because we're not quite ready for research here, and you guys are moving on. I'd like to see you guys start to develop the outlines of a presentation on the idea. I can't do that in that space the exact way I want to do. The spaces that Jason presented before allow us to do that. And so there are a lot of programs that Dr. Regan rightly focused on, drew our attention to. But even if we don't change those programs, the classroom spaces themselves don't allow for the type of learning that we want, to be seeing in our schools. Okay. I will stay on this.
Okay. So top left, that's a cool computer lab. That's Lab 102, but that is from 19. That's actually the late 80s, early 90s look to a computer lab. That is, look, we all need to be able to sit at our computers and do individual work, but that is so not real world. When you guys need to get together, when you go to exec session, don't talk about the topics, but you don't go into this room and then everybody sits in front of their computer and then just sits at a computer. I mean, you actually talk, and you've got assistive technology with you. So there's less of a need when we're talking about transferring skills and content to real world situations, less of a need where students need to sit in a large room filled with computers, one for every student. It has a place, but it's definitely not as much of a learning and instructive space as it is an individual workspace. We won't spend too much time on this, but we can talk about all of them. ESL program, really, it's a program that's been a long time in our district. We got an email from Maria Montgomery or Maria Alanis this week that talked about that the state's going to be watching our programs even closer. And we need to, when you're talking about English as a second language learning, we are at the high schools teaching content to students who don't have that basic English, and in some cases are coming from countries where they haven't had any formal education as well. So they have to have unique spaces, just like we had the special education spaces beforehand. Career Tech Ed?
Well, this is perfect for me to present on. Much of the career in tech ed simply doesn't exist at Centennial. So what do I want to have happen? I want to send my students to these classes in a way that doesn't disrupt the beginning or the end of other classes on their schedules, the way it works now with the transportation that we have going back and forth between the campuses. And then there are just needs that we have for all of these spaces. One of the things that we're going to be doing with a little bit of our new computer courses that we have in both schools is actually, computer breakdown and building, right? Constructing computers, seeing how they function, understanding it. You need space to do that. If I were to go back to those other slides, which I won't, no, it's all right. But if we were to go back, you would see, of course, that's a little challenging to do in the spaces that we have. Not impossible, but not the way we want it to go. And, I could elaborate on all those points up there as well. So.
I want to add something real quick too. What I think is interesting too, when you walk through high schools in general, you see teachers trying to make this happen with what they have as well. So I don't know how many times I've gone through our high schools, and when I was in a high school working, where you have groups in the hall of kids, because we're being responsive to their learning needs at their time and saying, you three, come on out here. I want you to kind of work on this. And then you have a teacher trying to watch and eyeball their class and work with them and go this, or they do it within their class. So our teachers are trying to structure their responsive teaching techniques to the space that they have. And you see it. You see it constantly, kids floating around in the hall and trying to have a space to be. But that's obviously not what we want to be doing. We can.
I don't know what you want me to talk about this slide? John, I tell you, we talked about this a lot. Perfect that I'm here at this mic at this time for this slide. We have 190 to 195 students in our marching band. We have a room that's made for not that many, and it's very small, and it's probably not safe. Interesting enough, when we were talking about the, what did you call it, cost workshop? Is that what you called it in the last couple weeks? I do want to point out, and I think this is important because I don't want anybody to land on this out in the community and think, why are you building a band room for 225 students? And we really talked about this in our meeting, and it was a little bit of a point of contention until we all came to an understanding that that's a room that's got to be designed in such a way that it can be used for multiple uses as well. Neither of us have 5 or 6 periods of 200 student bands. We need that space for that one time a day. But we also need to build it in such a way that's a flexible space, just like all the other spaces, so that we can use it in different ways. Greg?
Yeah. I mean, we can go slide by slide. John, how do we do? Do we answer your question?
Well, yeah, to be fair, I more or less know the answers to the question. The point is well, a lot of the public discussion in the last 6 months had things to do with not education.
Yes.
So talking about this is the stuff that matters to me. This is why I got on the school board, to talk about education stuff.
Yeah.
And there are things that we could be doing next week.
That's right.
That we are not doing simply because we don't have the facilities.
Right, and I'm thinking now of Justin Barnhart, our PE health CAC, who was here 2 weeks ago, talking about the types of individualized data monitoring and learning they want to do in their PE classes, which just can't happen when you have 4, 5 classrooms of kids in a gym at the same time. Volleyball up here, floor hockey up here, and a bunch of kids playing basketball in the middle. When you have that many kids in a space, you are monitoring them. You're looking at them. But you're not really instructing, the way you really want to be doing during that exact time. Spaces like this make that possible, that you see on the slide. So I appreciate you drawing our attention back there.
Right. And
Yeah.
like I said, just a couple of comments before giving up my time at the microphone. As somebody teaches at U of I in computer science, I don't teach in rooms like that at all. As somebody who's taken classes, I would never learn a darn thing in a room like that. I would simply tune out or find a way not to be in class so as to not get in trouble. But this is not how we teach in college for a lot of our classes, at least in the tech stuff that we're talking about. I know for vocational tech, it's something that perennially is talked about in Springfield and DC of this is the kind of stuff we need to integrate into our high schools. So these are the things that we're talking about putting in place, but not doing it also comes at a cost. I mean, it's not a question of $0 versus $150 million, and that's what I want to bring out, is that there are opportunity costs simply because for a fairly long time, there hasn't been the kind of facilities planning and upkeep and all the deferred maintenance and on and on. We could talk about that for days, but let's not, that have led us to here today, that have caused us to, in a degree, shortchange the programs that we offer our students in a town that really is defined by education. Without the U of I, would this town even exist in any way the way it does today? And it wouldn't. So that's certainly something that I like seeing that we are addressing and getting there to offer these kind of programs. And that's what I think is the most important part of this plan. So thank you for humoring my question.
You make a great point, though, and that is, you're right. I mean, let's get the focus where it needs to be, and that's on the academic piece. And you brought us to a good point to bring back that information.
There's a madness to my method.
Cedric.
I just really want to say, I think that this all ties in back together with the first presentation, which is, things like discipline referrals and things of that nature. A lot of people, like I said, that learning is different from how it was in the past. And, we tell people to go visit our schools and to see the conditions, but they really don't understand how it is to go to, 8 classes and it all be the same exact environment in this, what feels like 1,000-degree school. So it's very, I see just necessary changes. And it was right there. But I believe it all ties back in, where there are those students in schools who succeed in these, classrooms with 30 students. But then in the, designs that we saw, there are those small working environments where there are students who, more than likely, if you don't exceed in those large classrooms, then those small groups, you really have chances to explore and learn. And I think that that's what's really great, is that for those students who aren't getting the necessary attention and things that would help them exceed in school, I think that's so important that we cater to their needs to have classrooms that help them learn, because they haven't always had the same opportunities and experiences and different things to help them.
Good point, Cedric. Thank you. Jamar.
Yes. Just real quick, as soon as I finished speaking, it dawned on me, like as we looked at the conceptual design, not the actual design of the building, but it was actually when they asked where the lockers were, and you said clusters. It took me back to in high school at Centennial. Our African American club did a student exchange with Whitney Young High School in Chicago. And when you said the lockers being in clusters, it took me back to that was kind of the design work and the type of learning work that they were doing then when we went there to learn in high school. It was late 90s, early 2000s. And that's the work that Whitney Young was doing back then with the collaborative spaces. I can recall the congregation areas and the spaces in the hallways, the cluster lockers then. And Whitney Young is a magnet school, so there's an application process, but they're doing that type of learning, but they're pushing out fairly high scores in the state, so they're keeping our state average up for that. And so if they were doing that learning then, isn't it about time that we can come in and do that learning, that style of learning now? And so it just took me back to when I sat in those classrooms, that how different it was, how they were learning than how we were learning here in Unit 4.
Thank you. Okay, great job. But I just, I want to comment on, you talked a little bit, Jason, about conversations you've had with people. So it's not like you guys just showed up and said, you know what, this is what you need, right? I mean, we're talking hours of conversations with teachers. They told you what they wanted, didn't they? The principals, they told you what they wanted, didn't they? I mean, and they're telling us today, right? You're pretty vocal. And so, and our ADs told us what they wanted. And so I think what people really need to understand is that this was a conversation that has been going on prior to your arrival, okay? This is a conversation that has been happening for many, many years. Teachers have been dreaming. Kids have been dreaming. Our fifth graders, should the ballot, the referendum pass in November, they would be the first people to attend our high school, all right? So as board members, our responsibility, our number one responsibility, is to ensure that Champaign Unit 4 continues to provide an excellent environment, not only for learning, but for teaching. It's time for somebody to pull the plug. And so, as board members, Christine, you've been here. Jamar and Ileana, you guys have been here. You've been talking about this for a long time. It's time for us to take some action. It's time for us to do what other people, not that they couldn't do it, they didn't do it. Okay, so, and that's not a slam to them. It's just that now it's our turn to make some things happen. So I want to thank you guys. One of the things I said when I first met, the challenge was for you guys to push us, and they did. Yes. And you did. You pushed our ability to dream, and we pushed back with our reasoning. Okay, but we can't build it too big. We have to be reasonable, and we have to be creative with the space. And so the movable walls, doing the classrooms for band to make 3 or 4. There were some aha moments and some conversations that happened, and that was really exciting to see. I'm excited for a new high school. I don't give a damn where it's at. Don't care. We just need a new high school. We have capacity issues. That's a real fact. So thank you guys for your work and for challenging us to rise to the occasion. Any comments you want to make, or?
Yeah, I think I said at the beginning, the process that we went through was really collaborative on purpose, right? It was never really about us. It was about us facilitating to get to a point. And so, as I said at the beginning, thank you, because it's each opportunity that we have to plan and work with school districts across the country. We do so with an open mind and optimism for the future. And so I see that in this plan. So hopefully you all do too.
Thank you. Good work. All right. Next up on the agenda, new business. Bills and Treasurers Report. Matt Foster. Okay, wait, before we start, Matt, we're going to take a little break, 10 minutes. 5? Can we do this in 5? 5 minutes? We will be right back. So moved. Second, that was Stuckey and Brown. 8:25, we will reconvene. Back in session. It is 8:26. We went 1 minute later. I'm sorry. Karis, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I did. I enjoyed.
If I could please have quiet. Excuse me. Thank you.
Yes, before we go forward, too, I just wanted to kind of take a step back and discuss some of the programming needs of our schools and some of the direction as well. I know with you, Lori, as well, and the administration, we had the opportunity to visit with a school called CAPS. And in the school in CAPS, we observed a lot of kind of the things that we discussed here today, the importance of 21st century learning and how they had entrepreneurship, engineering, and technology all combined. And so I really wanted to take this opportunity to discuss with the administration on focusing on that curriculum and that programming and see if we can do that here in our district.
I think that it is an excellent idea to have the board charge administration with exploring the whole, the idea of what can we do, especially in a renovated Central, right? I think there are so many possibilities, and being able to respond to what the economy needs in our area, and that it becomes a collaboration with different businesses and other leaders in our community to take a look at what those programs could be. We saw that last week when not last week, 2 weeks ago, at our board meeting when we shared that video, right, about how that program came into being at Blue Valley. And it really was a collaborative effort and really took off. So I think that as we move forward, we saw some really great ideas for New Central and renovated Centennial. But I know that there is a commitment to repurposing the current Central. So we know that we would like to combine programs to cut down on operational costs. But I think that having the administration do a study and report back to the board maybe in the next couple months would be a very good idea.
Okay. Thanks, Karis. That's a great idea. I think that all goes back to being good stewards of our investments for our community. Okay, so now, action agenda, new business, bills and treasurer's report. Matt, we are now ready for you.
Good evening.
You're on.
Sorry. If you need me to do any AV work at your house, I work at a very affordable rate, and I have no guarantees on that work. With that being said, for July's accounts payable, we had $5,632,049.69 in checks. The majority of that, of course, came out of our education fund at $4,058,148.47. That was the first month of the fiscal year, so and that's about where we expected to be.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Shalafu Brown, questions or comments? Tammy, call the roll, please.
Ms. Shalafu?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Bamanek?
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Savoy?
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey?
Yes.
Okay, passes 7-0. Next item, I turned the page too quick. Approval of Bottenfield change order number 8, Matt.
Yep, the next two items are change orders 8 and 9 for Bottenfield. The first change order number 8, we had issues with field coordination. We wanted to add some power and some data ports, excuse me. We wanted to add a sidewalk to make it better circulation for our students going around the building. I think those are kind of the main ones that really kind of jump out at me. That total change order was $19,330, and at that point that brought our contingency down to $262,171. Any questions on that?
Need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, one more time.
So moved.
Second.
Savely and Bambanek. I have a question.
Yep.
Change order 90 and 93. The first one was for city requirements for $11,000.
Sure.
The next one was for drawing coordination, a code requirement, $2,100. Why are these coming on as change orders? Should they not have been something that was known about before? And who's the contractor that made that?
That's a great question. I'll go ahead and let either Arlene or is it Kevin back in there? Go ahead and come on up to the mic and explain what those two would be referring to.
Hi, I can definitely answer that question. So for COA 90, the sidewalk elevation was an issue that was discovered when they did the layout of the building. There was a 4-foot drop at the existing city sidewalk that our new sidewalk was going to meet. So the grading elevations per the civil drawings would have caused too steep of an elevation. So in discussing it with the city, they were going to require that their sidewalk elevation be raised. It also required some public sewer work to be done around there to accommodate the different elevations. So that's kind of a combination of a city requirement as well as a drawing coordination item. And then the second item is the duct detector on HP 127, and that is a drawing coordination issue, is what we have.
Okay, I don't think you've answered my question.
Okay, absolutely. So why is it a change order?
Why wasn't it addressed in the initial?
Contract documents.
Mhm.
Again, we do our best to go through all of these documents and make sure that we pick up every single line item that is on those documents. But as we go through the field, as we do the actual physical work, as the contractors get out and they provide all of their documentation to put together the final working set, these items do come up.
And who's the contractor?
On this job, Rohr & Russo
Okay.
is the general contractor.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lynn?
I have two questions, actually. And I'm not quite sure who will answer all of them, but don't go away, Kevin, you might be part of one. Since the city required us to do paving, storm, and grading revisions, including 100 feet of storm pipe and inlets, are we going to get any type of reimbursement from the city for doing some of their civil engineering work for them?
I would say the city typically would not participate in that, since the reason for the change was caused by the modifications to the school's property. But I'm sure we can look into that as an issue, but I would not expect that the city would participate.
Okay, thank you for that. Secondly, I would like to note, and this is hopefully a praise to everyone, we're drawing very close to the end of this project, and we still have over $250,000 in our contingency that we have not had to use on change orders or other improvements, modifications to this project. I think that's
Yeah,
a
correct.
very good
As it
thing.
last stood, we're sitting at 2.4% of a total 5% contingency. And we just did the substantial completion paperwork, got the building issued for occupancy, and we'll be doing the punch list verification this week for final acceptance of the building.
Any other questions, comments?
So do you have any other change orders coming to us that you know of right now?
Arlene, maybe you know of any outstanding COAs at the time, but I'm sure there's a few
But
stragglers
nothing-
that are going to be based on time and material change orders that we're waiting for some backup or some minor things that came at the end, but no major items.
So there's a good chance this project will be
Considerably
200,000 to $250,000 under budget.
Yes, I would say that's very safe to assume.
And the contingency on the project was $394,000? Okay, just to be
Yep.
clear.
All right, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Tammy, please call the roll.
Ms. Safely?
Yes.
Mr. Bamanek?
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Shalfo?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey?
Yes.
Okay, passes 6-1. Next item, approval of Bottenfield change order number 9. Matt?
Change order 9, this is for the unforeseen field condition behind the existing chalkboards that were removed. CMU walls were parged, that's like a scoring or a scratch. The cost is to fur out these walls, the finishes portion of the work, and was performed on time and material not to exceed basis. The final cost did come in under the estimate by $3,517. The total change order was $17,562. And that will go ahead and leave our contingency amount at this point at $244,609.
Motion?
Second.
Bamanek and Lee. Questions, comments? Tammy, please call the roll.
Mr. Bamanek?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Shelton?
Yes.
Ms. Safely?
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey?
Yes.
Okay, passes 7-0. Approval of Robeson Kenwood abatement change order number 1. Matt?
So we've just recently started getting to work on the Kenwood project. This change order has to do with the abatement work for asbestos that we needed to take care of before we could actually start any construction or remodeling. The field condition that was uncovered was that when they removed the kiln, there was still some tile underneath the kiln that they didn't know was there until they removed the kiln. And I believe a partition was covering another little area of tile. So that was done on a time and material basis of the original contract. And so that amount was $2,313 to remove that extra asbestos that was found.
Okay. Motion?
Second.
Bamanek and Brown. Questions or comments? I have a question. The contractor on this, are they an MAFBE vendor?
I don't believe so. Well, it could be female for this one. For Reliable
Is it
Environmental.
Reliable Environmental is the abatement designer.
Right.
And they are a female business enterprise.
Okay.
But the abatement contractor, no, they are not. And that was your question, the abatement
Right.
contractor.
Mhm.
No, they're not MBE or FBE. I don't believe.
Okay, so help me to understand what Reliable does.
Reliable prepares the bid documents for the abatement work. And once we bid the work and you hire an abatement contractor to do the removal, they are on site supervising, doing the air sampling tests, all that sort of thing.
All right, very good. Thank you. Tammy, please call the roll.
Mr. Bamanek?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet?
Yes.
Ms. Shelton?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Safely?
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey?
Yes.
Yeah, passes 7-0. A resolution providing for and requiring the submission of the proposition of issuing school building bonds to the voters of the district at the general election to be held November 4th, 2014. Mr. Lockman.
So just some bureaucratic stuff first. For purposes of the minutes and certification at this point, I would ask Ms. Savely as Secretary of the Board just to read the title of the resolution.
Okay. Resolution providing and requiring the submission of the proposition of issuing school building bonds to the voters of Community Unit School District Number 4, Champaign County, Illinois, at the general election to be held on the 4th day of November 2014.
Great, thank you. So as we discussed 2 weeks ago, passage of a resolution is necessary to place a proposition on the ballot for the November 4th election. And that proposition, as currently presented, reads as follows, and I am on page 3 of your packet in the middle, and I'll just go ahead and read this as it's currently presented. Shall the Board of Education of Champaign Community Unit School District Number 4, Champaign County, Illinois, build and equip a new high school building to replace the central high school building, build and equip in addition to and alter, repair, and equip the Centennial High School building, improve school sites, and issue bonds of said school district to the amount of $150 million for the purpose of paying the costs thereof. This, again, is consistent with some cosmetic changes with the proposition that was presented on July 28th. And so we want to open this up for discussion and action by the board. If there are any alterations to wording that is included in the resolution, just ask that an amended motion reflect that.
Need a motion to put it on the table?
So moved. Second.
Stuckey and Shalafo. Questions, comments? John?
Is the language of this ballot question restrictive? Meaning, assuming the voters approve it, does the money have to be used for Central and Centennial and nothing more?
As is currently presented, yes.
Why not use general language? That way cost savings could be used for other projects, say Dr. Howard.
That is certainly an option. One of the things that the district could discuss. One of the reasons that generally this is done in speaking with individuals who have worked with other districts on their propositions is that you want to be sure the voters know exactly what it is that they're voting on. Certainly for those of us in this room, this is something that we have spent a lot of time discussing. For people who may show up on election day and not have that background knowledge, certainly would want them to know what they're voting for. The option, if there was thought that if there is excess money once those projects are taken care of, would be to add language indicating that the district could construct other improvements in and about district facilities. That kind of language could be added to this question.
Okay. Fair enough, that's my question for now.
Thank you. I'd just like to add my 2 cents before we start to talk about this one specifically. I think tonight we were given a very specific number. Just like when you go to buy a house or buy a car, it's not $200,000 and no cents. It's always a very finite number, very specific number. So if we are going to move forward with a ballot resolution, I want the full number. I want the correct number that was presented tonight. And my other question, improve school sites, is that specific to Centennial and Central?
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
that's standard language for a resolution of this kind.
Lori, can you clarify? Are you saying you want 148 million or
149? Was it 148.9, something like that?
Because that's just an estimate too. Why?
That's
why
the
would
best.
you-
That's the estimate we were given tonight.
Right. I guess rounding it up by 1 million gives a cushion because we certainly don't have to bond everything. But if something should happen that's completely unforeseen, while it's a very, very tiny cushion, it's a cushion. And I think we also need to protect our voters in that should something happen, that we can still cover things as best we can.
Jason, on your numbers, can you put that slide up that? Can we put the slide up that talked specific about the numbers, because they were broken down, furniture and
I guess I have just one technical question while they're working on that. Does that number include any contingency built in?
That's what I thought.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Well, that
So I just make my point.
changes the comfort level.
Understood. I mean, just as we saw tonight, contingencies, I'm real here's I guess my own personal issue. When we have a contingency, we know that we can screw up because we know that we're gonna catch it. Right? So if we have a huge contingency, we can screw up this much before we go over budget. I have a problem with that. That's just my own personal problem. I don't like to do my budget like that. I certainly don't want this budget to be run like that. So that's my point.
I don't think that's really what a contingency is.
What is a
meant.
contingency?
A contingency also is there to catch
Changes.
changes
Yeah,
that we should make.
Yeah, agreed.
Catches the fact that building is not an exact science. Every single building is different, and you cannot foresee everything. I think the architectural community is better at it in a way than they used to be, and that's the reason drawing stacks are 2 inches high now, because they're trying to catch as many things as absolutely possible, but you cannot catch it all. There will always be things that just couldn't be foreseen.
So we're talking $1.5 million difference. Is what we're talking about. Can we go back to the breakout of the numbers? Well, either, so, yeah. Where are the contingencies? In here. Where's that number?
So the contingencies would be, when you look at the building construction, the renovation, and the site construction, those are what we call the hard costs. And then there's contingencies put on there for design, construction, and owner. And they're basically all there for you to do exactly more so with what Christine's talking about. I think what you're concerned with is when there are allowances, and I think that's the proper term. And I totally believe in your court when there's allowances versus contingencies. So there's roughly 10% contingencies that go on top of right now what we're calling the bid numbers. So kind of the indirect costs, if you will, is where those line items appear.
Okay. And so does it also make a difference? I remember in some of our earlier conversations about how the project is managed, right? So a construction manager, I mean, so there's some accountability that is shifted. Can you talk a little bit about, do you understand what I'm trying to get to?
I do, and I think that's a whole workshop in itself because there's different delivery methods
Right.
and pros and cons, and it really comes down to how I articulate it is risk management.
Right.
And, you know, everybody's responsible for the success, and so it's the contractor, the owner, and the design team and the architect. So exactly where those skill sets are with the people that you have, not only within your four walls, but ours, are the designers, but also the construction industry, whether it's a CM, at risk, agent, you know, those type of things, is something I think is worthy of a workshop. But in overall, the job is about managing the risks and minimizing that as much as possible. And so to do that at the end of design development, I think you're familiar with that term, correct? So you will, as a school district, know where every dollar is being spent and how, right up to contingency reallocation, dealing with asbestos tile, how much of that is at Centennial. So you'll be able to see and know how those drawings or bid documents are going to be reflective of every single dollar. And some of those cost models, you know, might get 30, 40 pages to know that.
Thank you.
John?
In the light that we're potentially having a big ask of property tax payers, and this question's to you, Matt, barring those things that we can't control, say pension cost shift or the state general education fund or those things that are Springfield and all of its wonder and joy, what's your comfort level of being able to hold our levy otherwise flat or as flat as possible to accommodate the fact that we're going to be asking for a property tax bump otherwise?
That's a good question. We do live under tax caps, so that really does limit, it's exactly what it does, what we can levy for. So the levy is going to be managed by the cost of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. And we've been very low on our inflation rate. I believe it's going to be 1.5 or 1.3 is coming up for this year's, for this coming up levy. So you can see that our actual dollars that we can bring in new are quite limited. So it stays pretty low, and that's reflective in the tax rate that we have right now. When you look at ours compared to the surrounding communities, we're either the lowest or second lowest, depending on how far out you reach.
Okay. Put it in more concrete terms, I know in the past year, the city of Urbana saw property tax bills increase somewhere around 11%.
Sure.
So
And
what you're saying is, at least
our-
for the next year, the most we could ask for is 1.3 to 1.5-ish.
1.3 to 1.5 for, I'm sorry, for the percent increase, is that correct?
That's the max we could ask
That's the
for.
max we can ask for, but the way it worked out, unfortunately, for Urbana is that their EAV was cut drastically as a result of Carl, so everybody else had to pick up the slack. So they weren't actually increasing their dollars that much more. It was just the dollars are coming from fewer pockets. And we're fortunate that we don't have to rely on Carl as much, and we have a much stronger EAV. And we're just blessed with that for our school district. So I would say that the rate is very unlikely to change drastically like it was in Urbana, and we're fortunate for that.
So your facts are supposed to mitigate my otherwise hatred for the PRU?
Yes, sure.
You guys are already touching on this too, but I just wanted to kind of ask, just in case viewers are out there, what does this mean for me as a taxpayer and my wallet? Does this event happen instantaneous? Is it over time, and how long is that time? Just want to get a general sense of how that impacts the wallet for our taxpayers.
That's a great question. These bonds would be 20-year bonds, and we don't have to do them all the first year for all 150 million. We've got about a 5-year window, I believe, once if we're given authorization to go ahead and issue these bonds, so we could do them in chunks. So that would have kind of a, let's say, a staggered impact on the tax rate for homeowners through over a period of 1 to 4 years. And so it would not be one large hit probably all at once.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other, Christine?
Yeah, I know that there are going to be some very disappointed Dr. Howard parents when they see this. We've worked really, really hard to try and have Dr. Howard in this. Judy, sorry to put you on the spot, but can you just talk a little bit about things that we're doing to try and address Dr. Howard and assure the Dr. Howard family that they're not being ignored?
Sure. So of course we had hoped to be able to do a new Central High School, a renovated Centennial, and also a new Dr. Howard as a K-8. When the cost came in, and knowing the comfort level of where we're at with what we're asking for, it simply, the board, you're making a very wise decision not to go above 150. So we certainly have walked through Dr. Howard. We've talked about some things that we could do within the building. We've also taken a look at other options that might be out there. For example, and this is just, in the preliminary stages, but, Columbia is is much better condition than Dr. Howard. And could Dr. Howard possibly move to Columbia? And then have the programs from Columbia go to Dr. Howard. And then once the new Central is built, obviously those programs will move and be consolidated at Central High School. And then I know that the board is committed to taking a look at purchasing land and then dedicating that and announcing that this will be the spot for the new Dr. Howard. Similar to what we did with Carrie Busey, right? And stating that that's the proximity then for signing up, because Columbia and Stratton are right next to each other, so you certainly don't want to have two elementary schools right next to each other and dealing with proximity. So I think there's a few things that could be done, and then we've taken a look at when can we access the 1% sales tax again, and so it would be recommended to go back maybe in 2025 to go for $30 million, which would cover the cost of a new Dr. Howard. I know that's
Space dollars or $25?
in $25, I believe, and I have to double check that piece of it. 30 in 2025.
30 in 2025.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then escalations.
That's
yeah.
a big number.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. I know that's 9 to 10 years out, and that is hard to deal with for Dr. Howard. I know that we were there and went through again on Friday, and the basement, and it's not ideal by any means, the conditions that we have at Dr. Howard. Not at all.
Thank you.
Okay.
When do you think you could effectuate such a move between Columbia and Dr. Howard, assuming that was a direction?
No earlier than next school year, the 15-16 school year.
That would be aggressive.
That'd be pretty aggressive, but
But it's
doable.
doable.
Doable. I know Jill Trentz is here as principal as Dr. Howard, and she, I want to call you out, but I know you did a walkthrough this afternoon. I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on that possibility at this point, or. Sorry.
Definitely looking at the age of the buildings are comparable.
Yeah.
And yet, looking at the facilities inside the Columbia building, there have been some things that have been done in there that I think would be beneficial to an educational program. Some of this way the space is laid out, and some of the extra spaces for perhaps reading recovery teachers, perhaps literacy interventionists, special educators.
are laid out in a different way in the Columbia building that might be beneficial to our program at Dr. Howard. Certainly, as Dr. Wiegand mentioned, the lowest level, the basement of our facility is in poor repair.
Very poor.
And there's some spaces in Columbia, including specifically the space that would be used as the cafeteria and the gymnasium have superior height levels to the ceiling, and some of the lighting has been addressed in that building. So we think it's viable. It's certainly something to put some serious thought to.
Yeah, again, just a very preliminary conversation.
Can I go back just to the Dr. Howard, the health by safety dollars, Matt? What
Yeah.
could that have addressed in Dr. Howard?
Nothing really on the cosmetic area. The building is pretty darn solid. When we looked at the most urgent items, it's very few dollars would be required to bring it up to snuff. But that's health, life, safety as opposed to function, form, comfort. And I think that Dr. Howard on the function, form, and comfort is, as Jill was saying, it's lacking. It's in disrepair compared to, especially I think when you look at all the other schools and the level of money that we've been able to put into our elementary schools, I think it just stands out that much more, the disparity in the layout and the finishes and things of that nature.
Okay.
I just want to follow up with the Dr. Howard parents that with the budgets we've put together for the two high schools, they don't have a lot of slush in them. We've trimmed them. When you said lean and mean, you know, there's no more real bells and whistles that aren't really related to the academic programming. We've cut the dreaded athletic facilities to the bare minimum. We haven't left anything in there that's just for fun. And so we don't take it lightly that we just don't have the money. It's just purely economics. We can't have control over what things cost and what we can really go after as far as a referendum. So just, we are thinking about the Dr. Howard parents and looking for solutions to that.
Lynn?
And if I could kind of tag along to that, we've done several projects, and we've done pretty well with projects coming in under cost. We hope that any work that we do at the high schools will be in the same boat. You know, there are days when we board members, I'm sure staff feels that we are literally in this building pulling desks and bookcases and couches away from the walls looking for pennies. We're trying to do everything we can to lower our operating costs because we are aware of the building needs that are in this district. And we do want to get something done. You know, the good news is if you look at the help wanteds, the economy does seem to be improving, and wages actually seem to be going up. The bad news is wages may be going up, you know, so we're gonna have to see how these projects come in and what we're able to get done and move from there.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just one, just to rehash what did we come to agreement with adding language for if there's extra monies available?
Well, we haven't really discussed it. Christine and I just disagreed.
No.
Well, I don't think one
I didn't touch
million would get us there.
Well, no, not that question about what number to put on, but adding language to say if there's additional monies, because we will stay under budget, that's what we're gonna just speak positively, that it could be moved over to other projects that need to be done, since we had the, 250 million, almost, whatever, 2 weeks ago, we had all the other capital projects that needed to be addressed.
Yeah, so you wouldn't necessarily add contingency language within the ballot proposition itself. What you would add would be language, as we discussed earlier, about constructing other improvements and about district facilities. Doing that would require that some of the money, say it's $150 million, would have to be spent that was the direction of the board, we want to make sure that everyone understands that some of that money would have to go to those projects if that is listed in the ballot questions. So if, for example, the project did not come in under $150 million, some money would still have to be spent on the other district facilities.
Amazing.
To answer your question?
Absolutely. This is my question.
Okay. Lynn?
If I could ask Mr. Lackman a best-case scenario question?
Okay.
Okay. Let's assume we did these projects and we managed to come in $10 million under budget. We only spend $140 million. If we approve this ballot language as it currently stands, and we are left with an additional $10 million at the end of the projects, do we have to rebate that money to our taxpayers, or would we have to file an amended ballot issue, or would that simply be an amendment within a board meeting to allow that additional monies to be used for other projects?
I think practically what would happen is if it was determined that because the bonds would have been issued by the time it was determined that things may have come in. I mean, there will be a budget established that will assist in determining how much to issue. But at that point, that decision would have been made. So it won't.
There won't be
Well, you would issue what the anticipated cost would be.
Yeah.
Right.
So
after you get the
those bonds would be sold.
Okay, so if we issue the bonds and we put the money in a bank account, and as we're doing the project, we're paying for the project out of that specific bank account. And at the end of both projects, we're left with $10 million in that bank account because we managed to do the projects that well. What happens to that $10 million? Is it rebated to the taxpayers? Do we have to file an amended ballot issue, or is that simply something we can amend within a board meeting?
So, I mean, rebating that money would be one option.
Okay.
Using the money to, if there were things that had come out, that you may want, alternates that you may choose to put back in for those projects, would be an option.
So a very real scenario, and I think it was BTW, was designed with a whole bunch of ad alternates. And when the bids came in, it was so far under budget that we added in all the ad alternates. And then that got us to the budget, but then they built the whole project, and we didn't use all of our contingencies. Now, for that, we were able to very easily move that money into other projects. But what happens if we, at the very end, don't use all of our contingencies and we don't have any other ad alternates to add?
I would say at that point that we would, one option would be to rebate and pay back some of the funds, which is something we've already started to do. Some of our money just in general, try and repay to more taxpayers.
The clarity is that we would not be able to use those funds for others projects besides Central or Centennial. Period.
Thank you, because that's
okay.
the
I thought that
answer
we
I
were
was
good.
trying to get to.
Because
Thank you.
that was an issue.
Yes.
For the 1%.
Yes.
Okay.
That some people
Okay.
thought that, yeah, they
Okay.
misunderstood, so you just want to be very clear on that point.
The money would have to be used for what is specified.
Specific to those
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
And if it is not used, then we would have to consider rebating it to
Yes.
the taxpayers. Okay, I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm just trying.
What are the options?
Yes, trying to build a best case scenario here.
John, do you have a question?
No, I had answered my question.
All right. Any other comments?
I'm just still really stuck on the Dr. Howard thing, but it just doesn't sound like that wording would
help.
Does not
It
work.
doesn't help.
And
It doesn't help to get them where they need to be.
right,
I'd
we
like
can't
to
fund
have the option
a
of-
third of a school.
No.
We need the whole thing, and so we need to do it right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So. If we wanted to change it, you said we had to offer an amended?
There would need to be an emotion to amend the resolution if there was something that was to be changed within it. As it is currently presented.
As a thought, if you want to amend or put in a motion, can we do 149 instead of 148.9 and the ugly number?
I'd be good with that.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to change the 150 to 149 as otherwise read.
Okay,
Change
so
that.
Lon has made a motion for me to be second.
Second.
Is there any additional
Any more discussion on that? No, I'm fine with that. Okay. Tammy, call the roll, please.
Ms. Bonnet,
Yes.
Mr. Bamanek,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Shelton,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Safely,
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey.
Yes. Thank you. Passes 7-0. Yes. All right. Consent agenda, new unfinished business. Brown,
Second.
Safely. Tammy?
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Safely,
Yes.
Mr. Bamanek,
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet,
Yes.
Ms. Shelton,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey.
Yes.
Passes 7-0. I need a motion to move into closed session in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120/2C, necessary to consider one of the following subjects, including but not limited to 120/2C5.
Sorry, just one. We did that.
120/2C1, employee appointments, employment compensation dismissals, and complaints.
That's it.
So moved.
Second.
Bamanek Brown team.
Mr. Bamanek,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Bonnet,
Yes.
Ms. Shelton,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Safely,
Yes.
Ms. Stuckey.
Yes.
Passes 7-0, 9:08. We are now in executive session.